Morning, everyone. Welcome to Pandesal Forum here at 84-year-old Kamuning Bakery Cafe. We have a very important topic today, and we have a very interesting and distinguished panel of speakers. Our topic this morning is about the Ayungin Shoal incident, analysis of what really happened, what impact on the future of Philippine security, economy, diplomacy, also Southeast Asia. Our panelists here, later on I'll introduce each one in more detail when I call upon them. But first, I'd like to mention all of the speakers today. Of course, we have His Excellency, Mr. Zhou Ziyong in the middle. He is the Deputy Chief of Mission and Minister Counselor of the Chinese Embassy in the Philippines. And also we have Professor Ana Malindog-Uy here, University of the Philippines Political Science expert and Vice President of Asian Century Philippines Strategic Studies Institute. Later on the way via Grab, Ms. Sass, also geopolitics expert, international diplomacy analyst, educated in Leiden University, Netherlands. We have also via Zoom joining us in Singapore, Dr. Henry Chan, a very distinguished geopolitics economics analyst. And of course, Mr. Herman Laurel over here is the president of the Asian Century Philippines Strategic Studies Institute. For the start, we'd like to invite for opening statement, Mr. Zhou Ziyong, Deputy Chief of Mission and Minister Counselor, Embassy of the People's Republic of China in the Philippines. Welcome.
Thank you, Wilson, for the kind introduction and invitation. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure for me to take this opportunity to meet with the friends from the Philippine media. Since the Ringai Reef incident on August 5th, all relevant departments and agencies of the Philippines made statements on the incident. We noticed that the Philippine media is following the incident closely and making extensive coverage and comments about it. We Chinese have an old saying, better knowledge comes from an open mind. On the Chinese side, China Coast Guard, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and National Defense, as well as my embassy, also made statements. We are convinced that truth lies in facts, not the volume of sound. So in that spirit, I'd like to further introduce the Chinese position and views on Ringai Reef issue. I hope the introduction will help you with a better understanding of the history of Ringai Reef issue and the cause and the whole picture of this recent incident, and contribute to an early de-escalation of the Ringai Reef issue and the proper handling of relevant issues through joint efforts. Ringai Reef is part of China's Nansha Islands. The Chinese position on Nansha Islands is consistent and firm. According to Potsdam Declaration and Carroll Declaration, all territories Japan has seized from the Chinese, including those of Nansha Islands and Shisha Islands, shall be restored to China. This is an integral part of the international order post-Second World War and the true status quo of Ringai Reef. On May 9th, 1999, the Philippine Navy tank landing ship LT-57 intruded into Ringai Reef and illegally grounded, citing the excuse of dilapidation, being stranded and distressed. The Chinese side lodged solemn representations immediately, requesting the Philippine side to tow away the vessel. The Philippine side also made explicit commitments to do so. The representations were put on record and well documented. On this, the Philippine media made extensive coverage then. It's been 24 years, and the Philippine side is yet to honor its commitments. The Chinese side, however, has always exerted the utmost restraint with a view to maintaining the relations with the Philippines and safeguarding regional peace and stability. Furthermore, out of humanitarian consideration, the Chinese side has made temporary and special arrangements for the Philippine resupply missions to bring to the grounded military vessel food and other daily necessities. In those 24 years, the Philippine side has not encountered a problem for such humanitarian resupply. Meanwhile, the Chinese side has also made it clear that we are firmly against transportation of large-scale construction materials to the grounded warship with the purpose of permanent occupation through reinforcement. At the end of 2021, China and the Philippines have conducted several rounds of discussions in order to manage the disputes over Yungai Reef. Such discussions have led to consensus on Yungai Reef resupply mission.
Recording in progress.
Throughout the year 2022, the consensus has effectively ensured general stability and tranquility in the waters of Yungai Reef. Unfortunately, beginning early this year, the Philippine government refused to acknowledge and implement the existing consensus and started to take a series of unilateral actions. Despite this, the Chinese side suggested earlier this year that the two sides shall discuss measures to strengthen management of the situation of Yungai Reef as early as possible to ensure peace and tranquility of the relevant waters. We also provided to the Philippine side a draft proposal. We are still waiting for the formal response from the Philippine side. To prevent any further incidents from occurring, the Chinese side has lodged representations both in Beijing and Manila to the Philippine side, requesting the Philippines to return to the track of honoring the existing consensus and refrain from taking unilateral actions before any new understanding is reached between us. Regrettably, in defiance of the repeated dissuasion and warning from the Chinese side, the Philippine side insisted on transporting construction materials to the grounded vessel for overhaul and reinforcement with the intent of permanently occupying Yungai Reef. The above is the cause of this incident. Under such circumstances, the Chinese side was made to react with necessary actions. China Coast Guard took warning law enforcement measures and stopped the vessel carrying construction materials. I believe you have also noticed that the other Philippine resupply vessel entered into the lagoon of Yungai Reef and performed its humanitarian resupply mission. This showed the restrained and humanitarian spirit of the Chinese side. On the South China Sea issue and the recent Yungai Reef incident, the US has played an unglorified role. Over the years, the situation in the South China Sea has achieved overall stability and provided a favorable environment for respective development of regional countries with joint efforts of China and ASEAN. However, the US and some other forces are constantly making waves in the South China Sea for fear that the South China Sea will no longer be chaotic. In recent incidents, the US took a hands-on approach to deeply engage in the whole process. It was the US who acted on and supported the Philippines to overhaul and reinforce the grounded ship in Yungai Reef, and even dispatched military aircrafts and vessels in support of the Philippine side. The statements of the US State Department and DOD are in tandem with the Philippines. The US has also rallied its allies to continue hyping up the South China Sea issue and the recent Ringhai Reef incident. Some trigger-happy American forces stir up situation in the South China Sea and relevant waters with the aim of arousing contradiction and even confrontation between China and the Philippines to arouse contradiction and even confrontation between China and the Philippines and disrupting peace and tranquility in the South China Sea. Their purpose is nothing but to serve the American geopolitical strategy. We hope that the Philippine side will remain vigilant against the masterminds behind all this and keep hands on the wheels for peace and tranquility in the South China Sea. China and the Philippines are neighbors that can't move away from one another. Blessed by a 1,000-year friendship, any disputes between us can and should be properly resolved through dialogues and consultation. It won't do anyone good to adopt a confrontational attitude or to leave our relations to instigation and disruption. Only forces with ulterior motives and countries outside our region will benefit from such a situation. During President Marcos' visit to China earlier this year, the top leaders of our two countries reached consensus that our bilateral relations are not defined by the South China Sea disputes, and the relevant situation must be properly managed through dialogue and consultation. We are also confident that so long as we have the strong political will to earnestly implement the consensus between the heads of the states of our two countries, we will be able to properly handle our disputes and maintain peace and stability in the South China Sea. China has repeatedly expressed its willingness to resolve differences with the Philippines through bilateral dialogues. We hope that the Philippine side will abide by the existing consensus and cherish the hard-won situation in our bilateral relations, meet the Chinese side halfway, and find an effective way of managing the situation on the sea through prompt diplomatic consultations. The Chinese side is also willing to accelerate the consultation on the Code of Conduct on the South China Sea, together with the ASEAN members, including the Philippines, to reach agreement at an early date on effective and meaningful regional rules in line with international laws, including the UNCLOS. Finally, on a personal note, I hope the situation in the Ringhai Reef is like the weather this morning. On the way here, there was thunderstorms, downpouring, but just upon arrival, now look outside. The sun came out and there is sunshine. With that ends my briefing and statement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. His Excellency, Mr. Zhou Ziyong, Deputy Chief of Mission and Minister Counselor of the Chinese Embassy in the Philippines, for your very extensive, detailed statement. Thank you very much. Later on, please be ready with questions for all our panelists here. Next, we'd like to welcome for opening statement Professor Ana Malindog Uy. Short backgrounder, she is cum laude graduate political science from University of the Philippines, also master's degree from UP Diliman, now Vice President of Asian Century Philippine Strategic Studies Institute, and about to complete her doctorate degree soon. Let us welcome Professor Ana Malindog Uy for your opening statement.
Thank you so much, Wilson, for that very generous introduction. To my co-panel of speaker, His Excellency and Kamentong, and I think Sass is coming. It's just that na-late lang ng konti dahil sa ulan. Ang grab niya, i-late dumating. But she will be here, and she will do like the usual Sass. would have a lecture. And friends and colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, a pleasant morning to all. In the Asia-Pacific region context, there are three major traditional security threats or flashpoints to maintaining sustainable peace and security. These are the Korean Peninsula, the Taiwan Strait, the South China Sea. The overlapping and complex territorial and maritime dispute in the South China Sea between the 6 claimant states. I want to emphasize there are 6 claimant states in the South China Sea dispute. And these are Brunei, Malaysia, the Philippines, Taiwan, China, and China. Hello? Okay. These are critical. I mean, the South China Sea actually not only is being perceived by many in the region. When I say region, it's the Asia Pacific and ASEAN as a source, as one of the sources of fragility of the strategic and security environment of the Southeast Asian region. The South China Sea is one of the most in-demand waterways in the world. Aside from the fact that it is a sensitive topic, for the most part, it is a disputed area involving multiple countries with multiple claims. The disputed waters of the South China Sea are indeed the object of contention among the claimant states with overlapping territorial and maritime sovereignty and sovereign rights claim. Sovereignty and sovereign rights are not the same. These are two different concepts. Fundamentally, the claimant states of the disputed South China Sea struggle and compete over sovereignty with no straightforward and trouble-free legal remedy and antidote. Another point of contention among the claimant states relates to exclusive sovereign rights over the abundant oil reserves, fishing stocks, and marine resources in that area. Likewise, the South China Sea is also considered important for strategic security reasons, commercial shipping, and potential hydrocarbons. Notwithstanding, efforts towards rapprochement on the South China Sea dispute are not as effective at the moment. Like, for example, the way we do things here in the Philippines, megaphone diplomacy, this is not an effective way of resolving the issue in the South China Sea. That will only escalate tension and would only, bridge more misunderstanding between the claimant states. We need to remember that there are many claimant states in the South China Sea. Our dispute is not only with China, but with the 5 or 6 more claimant states in the South China Sea. That's something that we have always to think about. It's not as if like China is our enemy, or it's only China that is competing with the claims of the Philippines in the South China Sea. But it seems like it's always China, China, China in this country, Hence, the disputed waters of the South China Sea seem destined to remain a regional flashpoint and prevailing strategic tension for the conflict since the 70s until today. Because of this, there are genuine apprehension that the South China Sea dispute, if not mitigated, managed, and resolved amicably among claimant states, could inflame a war in Southeast Asia. And that's very dangerous for everyone in the region, not only for the Philippines, not even for China, but everyone in the Asia-Pacific region, much more in the Southeast Asian region. I think we need to think about these things, no? This makes the South China Sea dispute a paramount peace and security concern and challenge that the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, is facing at the moment. It's not only us, it's actually the whole ASEAN region. Now, let me say something for us as Filipinos, no? Filipinos should contend with facts and realities. If we want to settle the South China Sea dispute with China or with any other claimant states, it is important to set the record straight again that the 26th arbitral tribunal ruling did not denote the victory of sovereignty over the territorial and maritime claims of the Philippines in the disputed waters of the South China Sea. Similarly, the tribunal did not delimit or demarcate or set limits any maritime boundaries between the Philippines and China in the South China Sea. The United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea does not apply to sovereignty disputes or dispute over how to delimit maritime zones. The resolution of this dispute, again, is left to the parties concerned to resolve among themselves. Ibig sabihin, ang mga ganitong dispute, nasa nasa mga nagki-claim yan para pag-usapan. The only way for this to resolve is really to listen to each other and resolve it. It's either bilaterally and multilaterally speaking. Yun talaga yung totoo dyan. Yun talaga yung way dyan para ma-resolve yan. Pag-uusap, diplomacy. That's really the key to the resolution of the dispute. The arbitral award simply clarified the maritime entitlements of the Philippines in the disputed South China Sea. And also, it to a certain extent declared the non-dash line of China as without basis and acknowledged the damage to the marine ecosystem resources caused by the reclamation in the South China Sea. However, the non-dash line per se is not even the sole basis of the claim of China in the disputed South China Sea, and our people has to study this for us to understand exactly the different claims in the South China Sea. Because if we don't understand it and we just assert ourselves without understanding, then there will never be understanding between and among claimant states. And how can you resolve this? You will end up in a very compromising situation that would lead us to something that we don't want. We cannot afford any military conflict in our region. Look at what happened in Ukraine. That's, the impact of that until now is economically we feel it so much. Rice crisis natin is affected yan ng Ukraine crisis eh. Kasi ang food security issue, ng global food security issue, impacts also the Philippines. This is precisely because of the Ukraine crisis. So I don't think the world would be able to afford another military conflict in the South China Sea or even over Taiwan. I don't see it as a good thing for everyone, for the humanity, for that matter. So dapat isipin po natin yan. Ang ano ko lang dito is, when it comes to resolving, mahaba ang statement ko eh, pero I will not read it through. I have a copy for everyone, no? But this is the thing, no, for Filipinos. Fighting for what belongs to the Philippines is undoubtedly an act of patriotism and nationalism. Nonetheless, in doing so, it should be based on facts and realities on the ground, and not on Uncle Sam and its cohorts' propaganda and lies, because otherwise, it is akin to fooling ourselves. In pursuing claims over the disputed South China Sea, Filipinos should think of how best to do it without endangering the country's survival and placing it in a precarious situation that would cost lives. The Philippines should resolve its conflict of interest and differences in the South China Sea, not just with China, but with the rest of the claimant state through diplomacy and peaceful means. Diplomacy is also an exercise of sovereignty and a potent weapon in constructively engaging China and other claimant states. Furthermore, politicizing and blowing the recent incident in the disputed South China Sea, particularly in the Ayungin Shoal or the Second Thomas Shoal, out of proportion, is not at all helpful or wise. This leads nowhere. What is needed is to find a middle ground that both the Philippines and China could agree to resolve the issue peacefully and diplomatically. In resolving conflict or dispute, both sides should listen to each other and consider both sides' points of view and sensitivities. A zero-sum game as far as the disputed South China Sea is concerned, being pushed forward by an external or third party with a huge influence in the Philippines, will put the Philippines in a dangerous position. Both sides need to be rational actors instead of being led by emotions. Ayungin Shoal is a flashpoint waiting to erupt that might destabilize the peace and security of the ASEAN region if both sides will not listen to each other, will not pay attention to each other's sensitivities, and if both sides will not settle this matter halfway or come up with a middle ground. I believe that when we face with a conflict or dispute, it is crucial for opposing parties to sincerely engage in discussion, negotiation, and diplomatic talks that resolve the issue amicably. I know that resolving the territorial and maritime dispute over the South China Sea has a long way to go. It's really a difficult situation, very complicated matter. Likewise, the process of building consensus may prove to be difficult. That is true. but it is not impossible, especially if both sides are willing to talk and negotiate. That is really important. In contrast, confrontation on issues surrounding the disputed waters of the South China Sea will undoubtedly be self-defeating and counterproductive for both sides and all regional countries. It means the whole region. Therefore, in the ever-changing, volatile, and challenging geopolitical realities of the ASEAN region and the broader Asia-Pacific, it is indeed imperative to look for alternative viable and potential solution and approaches to mitigate, manage, and resolve the dispute in the South China Sea if the ASEAN region is to attain sustainable peace and security. Contemporary global and regional issues like the dispute in the contested waters of the South China Sea need varied, creative, and alternative solutions vis-a-vis existing ones. And what are the solutions? What are the possible solutions that the Philippines could possibly look at? First is joint management of the resources in the South China Sea, especially when you talk about fisheries, oil, and gas. There are a lot of possibility to that. We should try to look at the South China Sea as a zone of peace and cooperation rather than a source of conflict. Because whatever we do in the South China Sea, if we cooperate, all claimant states cooperate, there's regional cooperation in the South China Sea, we can treat it as a public good, as a regional public good. It is not impossible. What we need in this country, especially with the leaders of the country, is the political will to do it. Political will to engage in discussion, be open-minded, be respectful, and listen to the sensitivities of every claimant states, and then meet halfway. Zero-sum game will never solve anything. Zero-sum game will lead us to a situation that, our country will bleed in a matter of time. This is what we need to think about. Hindi pwede yung gulo-gulo-gulo. Wala hong nangyayari sa gulo. Nauuwi lang ho yan sa hindi magandang sitwasyon. Ang kailangan natin is we need to be rational actors, we need to be rational-minded, open-minded, and look at possible solution. Kaysa manggatong, kahit yung mahirap ginagatungan yung sitwasyon Hindi dapat ganon. Ang kailangan natin is huwag gatungan. Kailangan natin isipin how we can bridge understanding and how we can resolve the dispute and the issue. Because that is what the Philippines need at the moment. We cannot afford to have enemies. At kung totoo yung foreign policy ng current administration na friends to all and enemy to none, then the only way for that to be realistic is to find solution to the problem, not to create more problems for the country. I rest my case. Thank you so much. And we will have question and answer later. We'll try to engage in discussion. Thank you so much to our friends and media. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Ana Malindogoy. I would like to thank China Embassy Deputy Chief of Mission for joining us. He has a very important appointment in another city. So before we continue, we have this tradition. Your Excellency, Mr. Cho, we have this photo with our pandesal. So you have to have a picture first before you leave, then we shall continue. Yes. Let's have a picture first with all the speakers, and welcome to Ms. Sass. Picture tayo, everyone. Yes, standing. Yes, let us please stand. This is our tradition here. By the way, bread is symbol of peace also. Yes. Once again, thank you very much to, thank you very much. Thank you very much, His Excellency, Mr. Cho Ji-yong, Deputy Chief of Mission and Minister Consular, Chinese Embassy in the Philippines. Maybe you can email us the statement also. We'd like to request. Thank you very much for joining us. We shall continue with the opening statement of President, actually opening remarks and opening statement President of the Asian Century Philippine Strategic Studies Institute, a nationalist intellectual, Mr. Herman Laurel, to give his opening statement. Please be ready with all your questions. Everyone here will answer your questions. Microphone. Microphone. Microphone.
I'm standing to show the message of our discussion today, which is on my T-shirt. No to war, no to EDCA. Because this is the issue that some sectors in the Philippine bureaucracy are pushing. Not President Bongbong Marcos, who said this is a gray area, an issue where discussion is necessary, but the likes of American ex-Air Force Colonel Raymond Powell, who is the one behind all these operations here, in collaboration with J. Tariela, the substitute, the proxy Philippine Coast Guard spokesman, who was not and is not the original spokesman for the Philippine Coast Guard, who is Captain Admiral, I think, Commodore Balilo is the original and continuing spokesman of the Philippine Coast Guard. He was replaced by this Tariela upon recommendation of American boy Antonio Carpio, and they created the West Philippine Sea spokesperson. So that should be first clarified. You will notice that Commodore Balilo is quiet, while in the June 30 incident, he was the first one asked by the media, and he said, I have no information about what that Raymond Powell was reporting. So again, this is the message. The Americans have been pushing for war in every part of the world. They're running out of other areas and they're now in Asia. So tandaan po ng mga Pilipino, hindi po para sa Pilipino ang ginagawa ng Amerikano dito, para sa puwat yang si J. Tariela at yung mga kakampi nilang American boys. Ito po ay para sa gera ng Amerikano. Okay, that being said, I'll read a prepared statement, but I will attenuate it, make it shorter. The situation we faced in the Ayungin Shoal or Renai Chiao or Second Samo Shoal is what we should call challenge and response. That is what is currently going on there. In such a situation, the event sets its own course. The Philippines was allowed and has been allowed for 24 years because of the constant communication and dialogue and compromise. For 24 years, the Marines on top of the BRP Sierra Madre has been delivered with sustenance, food, water, medicines, and such essentials for life, for humanitarian existence. In other words, uulitin ko sa Tagalog, pinayagan po sa pag-uusap nga ng China at ng Pilipinas 24 na taon na mapadalhan ng sustento sa pagkain, tubig at medisina ang mga tropa ng Pilipinas doon sa BRP Sierra Madre. 24 na taon. Wala namang ganyang kalaking drama tungkol doon sa water cannoning. Bakit po nangyari yung water cannoning? Kasi liban po doon sa delivery ng humanitarian goods para sa ating marino, may pangalawang Philippine Coast Guard ship na may dala ng construction materials para magtayo po, lalong patibayin po yung nabubulok na Sierra Madre, at magtayo tulad ng ginagawa ng Vietnam po sa napakaraming pulo na kontrolado nila ng malaki at matatag na mga establishmento or structures. Yun ang hindi kasama sa usapan ng China at ng Pilipinas. Now, nasa karapatan naman ng Pilipinas, it is in the right of the Philippines to challenge. Pero nasa karapatan din ng China to respond with whatever sovereign action it decides because it is exercising sovereignty there. So wag po magreklamo ang Pilipinas at magpasalamat na water cannon lang. At hindi po tulad ng nagamit ng Pilipinas noong 2013 laban sa isang Taiwanese boat na minasinggan ng mga Coast Guard natin po. Let's make that clear. Kaya si Tariela po ay binobola, niloloko ang madla sa kanyang sinasabi na yung nagpapaliwanag ng buong katotohanan ay traidor sa bayan. Siya ang traidor sa bayan. So agad-agad inulit na naman ng China, magtakpo tayo sa gitna. Let us meet halfway para may compromise. At hindi po maulit yung mga sigalot na ganyan, which has been the case for 24 years. Tandaan po natin lagi. So, nandito tayo sa sitwasyon ngayon na inalok na naman ng China, magtakpo tayo sa gitna, pag-usapan natin. Now, nagkaroon tayo ng ganyang pag-uusap. We had that same agreement doon sa Reed Bank or Recto Bank Joint Oil and Gas Exploration. Na nung Marso pa, nitong taon na to, nung nakaraang taon, 2022, sabi ni Presidente Duterte, dapat tuparin natin ang kasunduan natin dyan sa Reed Bank Joint Oil and Gas Development. Pero yun po ay sinira ng American boy na si Locsin po. So ang nagkahadlang po dito sa mga magandang sanang maibunga ng pag-uusap ng Pilipinas at China ay yung mga American boys na dinidirekta po ng mga private companies tulad ng Metro Pacific, yung Forum Energy, ni Manuel Pangilinan. Now, that should be made very clear. I will fast forward to a message, the reaction of a very responsible, very intellectually acute maritime lawyer, Dr. Melissa Loha. Dahil sa reaction niya dito sa nangyayari, siya ay sumulat at nag-post sa social media. English po ang post niya, kaya itong babasahin ko. Sabi ni Dr. Melissa Loha, the fathers, sons, and husbands of the poorest sectors in the Philippines will be the first to be drafted into a war with China. The middle class and upper class will not be the first to be sacrificed. It is therefore the patriotic duty of those who study international relations and international law to make sure that such sacrifice of Filipino lives will truly and solely be for the benefit of the Philippines rather than of America. We have to learn from the death of 400,000 Ukrainian soldiers at the altar of the American flag. It is our patriotic duty to protect our people from false flag and wag the dog incidents. Military history is replete with such tragic instances. Ang sinasabi po ni Dr. Melissa Loha na false flag, gagawa ng Amerika ng insidente na ibibintang sa kalaban nila para magsimula ng giyera. Tulad ng sinking of the Maine in the 1800s, 1896, 1897, para magkaroon ng dahilan na sakupin ng Pilipinas laban sa Espanya, at yung Gulf of Tonkin doon sa Vietnam naman na nag-eksena sila na inatake ang barko ng Estados Unidos para magkaroon ng dahilan na ibomba ang North Vietnam. So I have a PowerPoint presentation. I usually discuss very shortly because I want to give more time to our other speakers, but these are important. No? Ito po ang PowerPoint ko. Itong first image po ang title page. No? But today, lumabas po yung article po ni Bobby Tiglao, importante po, na kanyang sinasalungat yung sinasabi na walang promeso ang Pilipinas na tatanggalin po yung BRP Sierra Madre. Andiyan po. At ako po ay naging advisor po ni Presidente Estrada. Napapag-usapan natin, verbal nga lang po, but magandang relasyon ni Presidente Estrada kay Chiang Chie-min at that time, kay Zurong Ji. Kaya po dinaan nila sa usapan yan. Now, if it will be denied, which we will explain a bit later. The second image is, of course, China now urges the Philippines to calm down, meet halfway. Kasi po, ginagatungan talaga tayo ng mga Amerikano at ni Jay Tariela at ilang mga elemento sa media na sumiklab ang damdamin ng Pilipino laban sa China without seeing the entire picture. Kaya po, doon sa pagpapaliwanag nila Sass, nila Ana, and the others po, nakita po nila Jay Tariela na hindi na umuubra yung panloloko nila, kaya binansagan na traidor sila Sass Rogando, yung itsurang yan, traidor, ano? Yung itsura nito, traidor, ano? Sila ay takot sa katotohanan. Ano? Tuloy natin po. Si Bongbong Marcos din nag-amin ng totoo tungkol sa Ayungin Shoal. Sabi niya gray area yan. Pero sinalungat siya kaagad ng mga American boy. Si Carpio, there is nothing gray about the West Philippine Sea. At ang Rappler na alam natin pundado ng National Endowment for Democracy, ayun, binatikos. Ano? Why Marcos is wrong about gray area in Ayungin Shoal? Si Maria Ressa, nagle-lecture sa Presidente ng Republika ng Pilipinas, gaga siya. Magmumura na sana ako, pero pabayaan na natin yung mga kawalang hiyaan po nilang ang problema po kay Presidente Bongbong Marcos, nadadaan sa pressure. Yung sinabi niya 1 oras, sa pangalawang oras po, babaguhin pag na-pressure na po siya. Ngayon, yung susunod po ay yung mga pinagsasabi ni Tariela na fake news peddlers who support for China amid incursion in the West Philippine Sea daw. Yung mga sinasabi ng traidor na nagpapaliwanag ng buong trato. Pero anong totoo tungkol kay Jay Tariela? Ito po ang susunod. Nagpapasalamat siya sa Estados Unidos. Let's see the next one. Yan, Jay Tariela, post po niya. Papasalamat siya sa Estados Unidos. Inimbita siya sa East-West Center. 3 weeks ago ata lang yun. Kung anong ginawa nila, anong whining and dining, we don't know what they did. Pero yan po si Jay Tariela. Liban po doon sa kanyang pag-resign sa Philippine Military Academy, which we will not dwell on. But mapapansin po nyo sa susunod na po na image po, yang si ex-US Air Force Colonel Raymond Powell, laging katabi po itong si Jay Tariela sa maraming interview. Because I have confirmed that the original information to our Philippine media, I talked to the reporters mismo, and the first reporter to break the news, that he had an interview with Raymond Powell, Americano, ex-US Colonel. Yan po ang nag-instigate po ng lahat na to. Yan ang nag-feed po kay Jay Tariela ng mga linya. Yan ang mga nag-feed kay Lasubiri at yung iba pa. So, ano suma total? Patapos na po ako. Let us remember American General Samuel Butler, na siya ang lumaban po sa First World War, etc. Siya ang nag-implement ng maraming mga gera po. May libro po siya, War is a Racket. Yan po si Butler. Patay na po yan. Sabi niya po, it is possibly the oldest, easily the most profitable, surely the most vicious. It is the only one international in scope. It is the only one in which the profits are reckoned in dollars and losses in lives. Pero yung si Raymond Powell at si Jay Tariela, nag-uudyok ng pera. Alam na natin kung bakit siguro. And the next image is, now, yung ating militar po, napipilitan na siyempre. Okay? Ang mga militar po na uudyok po, sumunod sa linya po ng pamalang. Ang militar po natin na uudyok na umahak po ng linya na nabibasa nila, narinig nila, napapag-usapan na paghahanda sa gera. Kaya po ang AFP po kinausap ang mga mangingisda sa Pag-asa Island, at ito po ang response ng mga fishermen. Pag-asa Fishers Group nixes AFP plan to train them to become reservists. Sabi po ng mga mangingisda po natin, medyo mahirap po sa amin, mga mangingisda yan. Tama lang po na mag-report kami ng mga insidente. Hindi po kami papayag, tamang report lang po kami, doon na lang po sa amin. Anyway, medyo malabo na. Hindi ko mapasa yung rest. anong importansya po nitong mga nababasa po natin dito? Pag-asa fishermen mismo, 24 na taon na po yung mga controversial dito sa claims, counterclaims. Ayaw nila lumaban kung talagang ginigipit sila ng China. Sa totoo lang, hindi po sila ginigipit, hindi sila hinaharas ng China, ng Chinese Coast Guard. May insidente. I have a paper, we were not able to print it, but you can download it from our Zoom site. Sabi ko, walang harassment ng Filipino fishermen. Sa ilang kaso na inimbestigahan nung panahon ni Presidente Duterte, 2 kasong inimbestigahan, 2 parehong lumabas na walang harassment. Yung isa misunderstanding dahil po nagbabarter lang po ng isda sa alcohol, pagkain, cancer din sa mga Filipino fishermen, at yung mga Chinese Coast Guard naman humihingi ng isda na para sa kanilang pagkain. So, barter lang yung isa. Yung isa lumabas si Mayor Arsenio Lim ng Zambales at sabi, walang harassment ng mga fishermen natin. Pero paulit-ulit yung mga harassment accusations na walang investigasyon, walang konklusyon at ibibitin at iiwanan na harassment na lang daw ang nangyari. Now that is not the way to establish the facts and the truth. But that is what many in our DFA and Philippine Coast Guard has been doing. So, now, itong mga nangyayaring ito at pag-uudyok po sa away ay nangyayari sa gitna po ng susunod, no, ng susunod na impormasyon. Ano, can we show the next one, Josh? Dali lang po. No? Sa gitna po nitong balitang ganito, 2024 budget needs 4 billion a day of borrowing. Araw-araw kailangan natin ng 4 na bilyong piso na pangungutang para masustena ang ating national budget. Araw-araw po yan. That is over 1.2 trillion a year pesos. At ang susunod po, ano yun? Rising rice prices in the Philippines fuel food inflation. Ayan, yan ang mga problema po natin sa totoo lang. Kaya po ako'y gumawa ng isang meme, sagot kay Tariela, peace is patriotic. Ito makita? Yan, peace is patriotic. Kapayapaan po ay pagiging makabansa. So again, uulitin ko po yung panawagan po ng Chinese government in this situation. China urges Philippines to calm down, meet halfway over Ayungin Shoal. And the last 3 items, again, uulitin ko, war is a racket. Racket po ang gera ng Amerikano, ng US war industry. At mapapansin po ninyo yung mga sumusuporta po doon sa posisyon ni Tariela. At bibigay ako ng mga pangalan. Renato de Castro ng De La Salle, mga scholar daw po. Javad Heydarian, Cabalsa, and so on and so forth na mga support. And of course, Rappler, Bariaresa, et al. Yan po ay pinupundohan ng CSIS, ng Albert de Rosario Institute, na lahat konektado sa CSIS, Center for Strategic and International Studies, na pinopondohan po ng US war industry. Now, sila po kung mag-conferensya sa malalaking hotel, may cocktails pa pagkatapos tayo sa Kamuning Bakery. At ginagawa pa tayong advertising ni Wilson ng kanyang pandesal. Pero yan ang totoo. Kami lumalaban na walang panggastos, sakripisyo. Siyempre may kaunti, pamasahe, and so on and so forth. And yang sila De Castro po ay milyonaryo yan sa kanilang pagbebenta ng kaluluwa nila sa mga Amerikano. Magkaharapan kami at si Tariela, we are demanding they face us in a debate sa harap ng publiko. Mga duwag kayo.
Thank you very much, Herman
One more
Laurel.
time, so Wilson, don't stop me from expressing our anger as a nation. Finally, three more points. 70% of the Filipino people do not want war. Yan po ang next post po natin. Reported by the Manila Times and other papers. Can we show that? 70% of Filipinos want assertion of West Philippine territorial rights through diplomacy
May
and
dyaryo
peaceful
dito.
methods.
Front page.
Oh, yan. And, well, again, final conclusion po, ang extension ng China ng kanyang kamay para salubong po sa gitna. Ulitin natin, China hopes Philippines meets it halfway on the maritime situation, and this is not from the Philippine Embassy. This is from Foreign Minister Wang Yi in Global Times. So that is an official expression of the Chinese government and the Chinese people. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you very much, Mr. Herman Laurel of the Asian Century Philippine Strategic Institute. Next, we'd like to invite via Zoom, based in Singapore, very respected geopolitics and economics analyst. We'd like to invite Dr. Henry Chan to give his opening statement. I'd like to give a short introduction of Dr. Henry Chan, who is visiting senior research fellow also of Cambodia Institute for Cooperation and Peace. By the way, Dr. Henry Chan, based in Singapore, graduated engineering from University of the Philippines, Diliman, then took his master's degree in biopharmaceutical from University of New South Wales, and completed his doctorate degree in management from Singapore Management University. He is an expert on economics, technology, and of course, analyst about geopolitics. Let us welcome Dr. Henry Chan for his analysis and statement. Welcome.
Oh, thank you very much to Herman and Wilson for inviting me. I must say that on this Ayungin issue, probably I am the least knowledgeable about it. And I guess that Herman and Wilson invited me, number one, to share the perspective from Singapore, looking at it from the ASEAN angles. And second is, as an economist and geopolitical analyst, what will be the consequence if things get out of hand? So can everyone hear me clearly?
Yes, you're very clear.
Oh, thank you very much. Now, the issue is like this. After the Ayungin incident happened on August 5th, today is already almost 10 days after, and you'll find out one thing. All the ASEAN countries are mute on the confrontations and or the encounter. And the reason is very simple. I think all the other 9 ASEAN countries look at it very warily. The reason is very simple, is that number one, the South China Sea issue is not just a China-Philippine issue. As Anna Marie has already pointed out, there are 6 claimant parties, 5 countries, 6 claimant parties, and 4 of them are Southeast Asian countries. So if you think that it's just a China-Philippine issues, you're going to make a mistake. The underlying issue is an area that was never becoming an issue until the UNCLOS came in, and this exclusive economic zone idea was introduced. Okay, now Anna Maria has given us a very good historical background on what is really on the 2016 UNCLOS decisions. So legally speaking, the only way left for everybody is to negotiate among themselves. There is no legal rights bestowed in the 2016 decisions. And number 2 is this. When you're looking at this kind of issue from a historical perspective, there's only one solution. We are not going to pass judgment on the past right or wrong. Everybody must somehow, somewhat forget what is happening before and look forward to a solutions that at the end is lasting. Now, territorial issue, whether you like it or not, is always an emotional issue because it appeals to the pride of a people. Now, Filipinos has pride for sure. Vietnamese has pride for sure. But don't forget, the Chinese has pride, the Malaysian has pride, the Bornean has pride too. So handle these kind of things, we must be very careful. Let us not be signed blind by the inflammatory rhetorics on either side. Chinese netizens are very, very angry. The Filipino netizens are very, very angry. But have they think of that? If that is just let your anger take hold of the day, what will be the consequences? So this is number one point. ASEANs are very worried and watch this as one of the two critical tests on ASEAN unity. First, of course, is how they handle, how each party handle South China Sea issue. Second, of course, is the well-known Myanmar issues. So the number two thing is this. If you look at the broader historical perspective, we are very worried that the United States is become a party in these affairs. Now, is it good or bad? I cannot pass my judgment. Okay, but the thing is this: when you have big power escalation confrontations, you must remember both sides are peer rivals. Are we going to be led into a World War I situations? I'm not so sure, but the danger is really there. Now, I still remember President Duterte many years ago has been saying that he has been repeatedly asking the United States whether South China Sea is categorically commitment of the United States. And he said the American answer is very flimsy. And I must say, if I'm an American decision maker, I will keep the same stand. I will tell the Filipinos that we are going to support you logistically, but if anything happens, the United States will not make any commitment. Because you must remember, mutual defense treaty is an executive action. It's a legislative actions. So unless the Philippine mainland is attacked, which South China Sea is not, okay, I don't think that the American legally is obliged, even with the commitment, the promise of the president, of the Secretary of Defense. This is one thing that the Philippines has to be concerned and be very careful about. In international relations, we always talk about capability and intentions. There is no doubt that is the intention and the willingness of every Filipino to fight for ancestral land. But the capability of doing so is really what is going to be the deciding factors. And more than that, is South China Sea Islands, because Ayungin is in the exclusive economic zone. It's not in the territory of the Philippine countries. So is it a part of the territory of the countries? That's another story. Now, I might put it this way. I was not born in the Philippines, but I grew up in the Philippines. I was educated in the Philippines, and my father spent his whole life in the Philippines. I love Philippines as much as I love my home countries. I really hope that this thing can be settled peacefully, because number one is, no matter what happens, just look at Ukraine. Even though it might win the war against Russia, which is not very certain at this point, the country is in ruin. And in geopolitics, we always have a statement: geography is destiny. Now, Philippine-China has a cultural exchange, people-to-people exchange for hundreds, if not thousands of years. It's very sad that this Ayungin thing is going to impede the progress of the two countries' relations. And as President Marcos has rightfully said in January, that the Philippine-China relationship is much more than the South China Sea issues. Let us look at it from this perspective and the President's wisdom to guide both sides to sit down again to get an amicable settlement solutions. Now, I would like to point out one thing is that in the Asian setting of territorial dispute, very often joint development is the rightful way to go because it benefits both sides. And I really hope that after they sit down and diffuse the tensions today, then some kind of thing positive to both countries is going to happen. And one thing very sober is that for the Philippine intellects and the Chinese intellects to consult, advise their respective countries that no matter how much oil is in South China Sea, 1 billion barrels, 10 billion barrels, maybe, these are just very small thing in the overall relationship of the two countries. China's economy today is 18 trillion US dollars. Philippines still have 400 billions. I think just fight over a few $100 million of oil or gas, is it worth it? I don't think so. So this is my contribution, and I hope that the organizers are happy with it. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much,
Wilson.
Dr. Henry Chan, for his geopolitics and economics analysis statement. Next, last but not the least, a very, very popular and respected international diplomacy analyst. We'd like to invite Ms. Sass Rogando to give her opening statement. But before that, I'll give a short introduction. Let us, wag na. Sige, let us prepare muna the whiteboard. Kailangan iakyat yung whiteboard dito sa taas. Do we bring it up sana? Diyan sa may...
Hello?
Yes.
Okay. Okay pa ba kayo? Can I have my slides, please? Para medyo happy-happy naman tayo. No? Pero I promise, I will not hold any punches.
No holds barred.
Away pala eh. Di away. War daw eh. Di war. Asa na yung slide ko?
Ready slides, Ms. Sass.
Time daw muna. Ano muna daw? What's this? Trivia daw muna. Trivia.
Ay. Saka may sinabi ka sa post mo about water cannons. Japan and Taiwan, nagulat ako.
Hello, hello. Ayan, okay na. Okay. Okay, let's start. So the title of my presentation is, I'm so sorry ha, please bear with me ha. Hindi ko maaalis ang aking pagiging teacher. So, medyo magtuturo ako ngayon. So I prefer na if you have some questions in the middle of my discussion, please just raise your hand so that I can address it right away, no? Para hindi ako mawala sa train of thought ko. So my presentation is entitled, The Reason Barbie Left the Philippines. Why rationality will save the Philippines from the warmongers of the South China Sea conflict. Slide. Okay, so bigyan ko yun ng history, no, ng Mattel. 1976, Mattel, you know, the company behind Barbie, had a manufacturing plant here in the Philippines. Okay, so far so good, no? December 1987, because of a lot of factors, Mattel had to lay off workers. So it was a business decision considering both internal and external business environment noong 1987, December 1987. So as a cost-saving measure, nag-lay off sila ng 1,850 layoffs. Siguro alam niyo na kung saan ito papunta. So, well, hindi talaga siya maganda, no? Wala namang gustong ma-lay off, diba? And of course, we do believe that work is a right. So remember those words. So work is a right. So January 1988, nagkaroon ng workers blockade. So sinara nila yung Kainta plant nila, inilipat nila doon sa Pasig plant. So nagkaroon ng workers blockade. But 85% ng mga employees ng Mattel wanted to just get on with their lives, no? They just want to work. But the strikers, mga ipaglaban ng ating mga karapatan, didn't want to. So they blocked the operations of Patel. So Patel, hindi na pala pwede mag-operate, no? Hindi na ito pwede pag-usapan. Just like any businesses, what did they do? They closed the operations. So in order for the Welga to save 1,850 jobs, they lost all the jobs, 4,000. So every one of them didn't have a job in the end. Can I have my next slide, please? So I will just give you a flow chart of what happened. So this is true for any company. So a company bargains or negotiates with the workers. Diba? Negotiate. Ngayon, syempre, hindi naman yan lahat ng workers, no? Gusto yung leader ng mga union. So some of them, okay na yan, okay na yung na offer. Diba? Or naiintindihan nila yung company, no? Na, naiintindihan naman namin kung bakit kailangan mag-lay off. And we're happy we have a job. So what do you think the union, yung mga leaders ng union would think about those people? They would consider them as a traitor to the cause of the workers. So the worker, so ito yung mga nagsasabi na traitor, yung mga workers na okay sa kanila yung negotiation or okay muna sa kanila sa ganyang setup, mag-huwelga. Iharangin nila yung operation. So what happens? The company stops operation, all workers lose their job. So this situation is applicable to any conflict, whether in your family, whether in your school, even in territorial disputes. Because this all boils down to understanding how conflict resolution and the negotiation process takes place. Can I have my next slide? Para lang maintindihan ng mga Pilipino. Kasi the other parties are engaging in demagoguery. They are not explaining things, right? They are appealing to emotion. Ngayon naman tayo, we will appear to the remaining intellect of the Filipino people so that we can save their intellect from these people who would like them to jump off the cliff. Ako naman, okay lang naman kung gusto ng mga Pilipinong tumalon sa bangin. Ako lang naman dito, katulad namin dito, gusto lamang magsabi sa mga Pilipino na, guys, there's a better option than jumping off the cliff. Siguro naman reasonable naman yun. No? Pero hindi naman kayo pipigilan. No? Kung gusto nyo silang sundin, tumalon kayo ng bangin, wala namang pipigil. No? Everyone is free to choose their own adventures in life. If they would like to jump off the cliff, just like the people being interviewed by the media would like them to do, they can jump off the cliff. But for us, we can just say to our countrymen, there's a better option. Okay. So this is how negotiation works. Okay. So makikita nyo dyan sa taas is, of course, the side of the party A and the party B. Okay. So nakikita nyo doon, di ba, merong bottom line ideal, bottom line ideal. Okay. Of course, the ideal position, gusto mong makuha lahat ng gusto mo. And that is also true to the other party. That's just really realistic about it. They also want to have 100%. Now, if you enter a negotiation, you cannot have 100%. Okay. So ano yung space na kung saan makakakita kayo ng agreement? Ito yung tinatawag sa negotiation na zone of possible agreement or ZOPA. Yan, ZOPA. Okay. So the wider the space, mas maganda, no? Mas marami kayong maaagrihan. Ngayon, Of course, meron kang bottom line position. Ito yung walk-off point mo. Okay? Na pag hindi, pag ito, hindi na to na, pag ito na yung, ano ko, narurok ko na ito, para makapag-agree ako sa'yo, mag-walk out ako. Pero hindi ka basta-basta mag-walk out. Okay? Mag-walk out ka lang kung yung BATNA mo, okay, what does BATNA mean? It means best alternative to a negotiated agreement. BATNA. So kung yung kagustuhan mo ay makukuha mo outside negotiation, go ahead. Walk out of the negotiation. But if you can't, walking out of the negotiation is stupid. Because you cannot get it out outside of negotiation and you can only get it within a context of negotiation, bakit ka mag-walk out? Diba? So I think itong ganitong understanding, no, pagpapaliwanag sa mga Pilipino, ay ayaw nila. Dahil meron silang agenda. Can I have my next slide, please? Ito ano na to, blockbuster na to sa atin dito. Ano, kanina pa ata pinag-uusapan dito ni Kamentong at ni Ana. Si kagalang-galang na ano ba to? Pentagon Coast Guard. Ay, ano ba yan? Ano ba yan? Ano ba? Pentagon Coast Guard. Philippine Coast Guard. Sabi niya, pro-China Filipinos traitors. Wow. Ayan siya, tandaan niya. Filipino traitors. Pare-pareho sila. Next slide. Hindi niyo ito nabanggit. Si Ambassador Babes Romualdez. And syempre, hindi papahuli, no? Sabi ni Ambassador Babes Romualdez, we support and stand by our Pentagon, Philippine Coast Guard. China's bullying and aggression is a highly emotional issue. So, emotional issue for patriotic Filipinos. So, it's a highly emotional issue for patriotic Filipinos. So, when they hear a few when a few misguided, intellectually stupid people acting like China's apologies, justifying the reprehensible actions of Chinese Coast Guard and militia vessels in the West Philippine Sea, it really makes them feel so angry. It will not be surprising if it drives them to become a lynch mob. O nagtatawag na ng lynch mob, diba? Okay lang daw. Justifiable naman daw kung magka-lynch mob, no? The recent incident where the Chinese Coast Guard conducted dangerous maneuvers and sprayed water cannons at 2 Philippine boats, actually one lang to, no? Carrying rice, water, vegetable. Hindi yung na ano. For troops stationed at the BRP Sierra Madre in Ayungin Shoal, it's just another example of the relentless harassment and bullying that we have been facing for years. While China keeps professing that it wants to resolve maritime dispute through peaceful means, clearly its actions indicate otherwise. So tandaan niyo yung sinabi niya, intellectually stupid. Ano daw? Ano pa yan? O naintindihan naman daw niya kung yung mga emotionally patriotic Filipinos sumugod at maging lynch mob. Okay. Ay, hindi ko alam, no? I don't want to assume the intention, pero everything will become clearer later at kayo na lang humusga. And then suddenly, the Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, General Romeo Browner, sabi niya, pag yung water cannons daw na bombahan ng tubig ng Chinese Coast Guard ang Navy ship, pwede raw itong ma-interpret. How can I say this without laughing, no? Pwede raw itong ma-interpret as an act of war. Pero kami yung intellectually stupid, no? Okay. Fine. Okay. Hihimay-himayin natin itong mga pinagsasabi nila, no? Okay. Ngayon, ito naman si Subiri and Company, no? Sabi niya, boycott Chinese products at companies. Yan. So, ayan na sila. But after a few days, eto na. Ayala finalized its deal with the Chinese electronic vehicle brand BYD. Ewan ko alam niyo yung BYD na. It's a very famous electronic vehicle brand, no? And yung mga hindi nakakaalam who doesn't know the industrial structure of China, you know, even private corporations, meron niyang link with the Chinese the Communist Political Party, because it's a socialist country, no? They would like their businesses to serve the needs of their people. So that's it. So boycott Chinese products, blagadag. Ayala partners with Chinese EV brand BYD. Ayala. Ito si Jay Tariela, kamentong mention this. Recently kasi ito, meron siyang fellowship, no? Sa East-West Center. Alam mo, ako naman, no, I support continuous learning. Kahit saan ka pang mag-learn, no? Kahit pumunta ka pa ng North Korea, kahit pumunta ka pa ng Iraq, kahit pumunta ka pa ng United States, there's nothing wrong about learning. So, yung kanyang fellowship, it was sponsored by the US-Philippines Alliance Fellowship. You know, it's a group of Filipinos and Americans who would like to find mutual interest between the United States and Philippines, etc. At yung mga members ng UN-Philippine Alliance, these are, you know, the rich people, etc. And one of them, na member ng US-Philippines Alliance Fellowship, I see. Can you go back to the previous slide? Okay. So, why are you encouraging Filipinos to boycott Chinese products, while at the same time, the rich are entering to business deals with Chinese companies, lucrative deals? Bakit hindi muna sila yung sabihan ninyo? Baka kasi kahit sina Ayala, hindi naniniwala sa pinaggagawa ninyo, or you have a different standard for the rich and the poor. Next slide, please. Dalawang click. Okay. Ngayon, itong mga pinagsasabi ni Babes Romualdez, ni Jay Tariela, I'm so sorry guys, no? Naunahan na kayo ng CIA. Because in June, was it in June? This year or July? Nag-publish ang International Republican Institute na isang publication na ang title ay Countering China's Information Manipulation in the Indo-Pacific and Kazakhstan. Siyempre, nandun ako, ano? At yan pa talaga yung pinili nilang i-post. Ilagay na sample ng post ko. This was my post. Talaga sinusubaybayan nila ako kasi yung post na yan, they screenshot the post a day after I posted it. Sabi ko lang, nakalagay kasi dyan, for 2 consecutive presidential elections, the Filipino people defeated the CIA's candidates. Bravo. So, ayan, ako ng PRC misinformation eklabu. Kaya hindi na ako nagtataka, no? Naunahan na kayo ng CIA. Bakit ko sinabing CIA itong International Republican Institute? No? This is a CIAR. Can we go to the next slide? You know, the International Republican Institute or IRI, ito yung bahagi ito ng 4 core funding agencies ng National Endowment for Democracy. Okay, so IRI, tapos National Democratic Institute, Center for International Private Enterprise, saka Solidarity Center. So yung nakakaalam ng CPP-NPA structure, pareho sila mag-spread ng propaganda. So meron silang for kung hindi mo bet ang ang Democrats sa United States, meron naman kaming International Republican Institute. Kung ayaw mo naman ng mga Republicans sa United States, meron naman kaming National Democratic Institute. Pero syempre, meron din kami for the businesses, sa mga entrepreneurs. At meron din kami para sa mga workers. So covered nila yung mga all bases. So the funding comes from the US government and then devolved to the National Endowment for Democracy, tapos sinahati niya yan sa 4 na yan. Ngayon, sabi nung dating, at hindi naman ito conspiracy theory, no? Ito ang sinabi ng dating head ng National Endowment for Democracy. A lot of what we do today was done covertly 25 years ago by the CIA. Kasi nga, yung ginagawa ng CIA, noong mga panahon na yan, nagkakaroon na ng problema sa US Congress kasi ang daming ekse-ekse na. So gumawa sila ng other arm in order to cover some of activities that could be considered legitimate in a democracy for the promotion of freedom, peace, and love the Philippines. Ganyan. So, that is the context of their statement. Whatever they're saying right now is a continuation of the narrative of the US government. Can you have the next slide? Because right now, you can Google this later. No? Go to YouTube. Sa Breakthrough News. Ito nangyayari sa United States right now. New witch hunt demonizes peace with China. So yung mga pro-peace na ayaw ng gera, gusto ng maayos with China, dinidemonize na ngayon sa United States. And we are continuing it in our country through these people. So, hindi siya nalalayo. Okay? Pero ang pinagtataka ko kasi, bakit sila concerned sa amin? Can we go to the next slide? Comment, I'm so sorry, I have to deviate from your analysis of the survey. This is the survey from Okta. Actually, medyo magulo ito, no? Just recently lang ito, July 22 to 26, Okta. So ang question is, ano ba yung measures na to be prioritized by government to address the conflict in the West Philippine Sea? 70% ang sabi is, assert the Philippines' territorial rights through diplomacy and other peaceful methods. Pero at the same time, 65% say na assert the Philippines' territorial rights through military action. 61% sabi modernize, so military again. And then the next one, conduct joint maritime patrol and exercise with allied countries, 40%. So all of them are actually the narrative of these people. Ibig sabihin, majority na yung mga tao naniniwala sa inyo. Ito yung gusto ninyo, ito yung gagawin natin. Yun ang gusto nila. Naman yung gusto naman natin na anak, Mentong, no? Alam mo kung ilan lang. 19%. So only 19% of Filipino believes in shelving dispute for joint economic development of the area. 19% lang kami. So bakit kayo concerned sa amin? Oh, 65% pala ng mga Pilipino gusto ng gera. 19% nga lang kami na ayaw eh. Di ba? Yung 70% na Filipinos would like to assert territorial rights through diplomacy and other peaceful methods. I think this is kind of difficult, no, to interpret. Kasi maybe Filipinos, the way they understand diplomacy might be the way mainstream media is presenting it. Diplomatic protest, mag-send ng note verbal, pumunta ng United Nations, makipag-usap sa Amerika. Maybe that's what they think about what diplomacy is. That is the essence of diplomacy. But it is not, no? I will discuss it later. So bakit kami why are they concerned about the 19%? Eh kasi ako, kung 19% lang yung umaayaw sa akin, no? The hell I care. Bakit kailangan na yung ambassador natin sa United States magsalita pa? Bakit si Jay Tariela kailangan magdrama pa, may press conference pa? 19% lang kami. Why spend that resources on the 19%? Do they want Filipinos to be 100% to be fully in their plan? Gusto ba nila na sa Pilipinas, kailangan lahat maniniwala sa kanila? Ano ba tayo? Are we a theocracy? Are we back in the dark ages na bawal kang mag-disagree sa orthodoxy ng simbahang Katolika, otherwise you will be burned at stake? Are you the Pope? What are you? Akala ba namin ang China ang dictatorship? Akala ba namin ang China ang walang freedom of speech? Lahat dapat lang sumunod sa gusto ng Communist Party of China. Bakit nyo sila ginagaya? Kung mali pala po yan, sir. Kasi ang ginagaya ninyo, ang United States. You know, when the United States wants to sell an agenda, lahat naman dito kami, no, lumaki na kami. Alam na namin yung galawan ng United States. Siguro yung mga bata, hindi pa nila alam. No? Nalalat mo namin yan. We have witnessed the Kuwait, the first Gulf War. We witnessed the invasion of Iraq. We witnessed a lot of things that the Americans did. That's why we can easily spot whether they're doing it again. But the thing is, a lot of our Filipinos are not aware because during those times, wala pa noon masyado tayong access sa international news. What we always see is what the Philippine mainstream media actually deliver to us. That's why, kita nyo, all those people, sinasabi nila, let's pursue peaceful means and diplomacy. 70% Pilipino. Pero hindi alam ng mga Pilipino what it actually means. Military action, 65%. Sino yung mga hindi nabibigyan ng espasyo sa mainstream media? Well, except from SMNI, but I don't consider kasi SMNI as mainstream media. So, sino yung hindi nabibigyan ng espasyo? Who? Those who believe in shelving the disputes for joint economic development of the area. And it reflects 19%. So that's how powerful mainstream media is shaping our preferences. Because that's what they want to do, no? They would like to limit the preferences of the Filipino people. And kaya pag nag-decide sila, they would like to make Filipinos believe na, hindi, we are already in a desperate situation. That's why we have to jump off the cliff na. And those people na magsasabi sa mga Pilipino na there is a better option are called intellectually stupid by Ambassador Babes Romualdez. Na hindi ba kayo nagkataka? Bakit yung ambassador natin, for example, sa UAE, hindi nagsasalita tungkol dito? Ambassador natin sa Kuwait, ambassador natin sa India, Pakistan, ambassador sa China or sa Japan, ambassador natin sa Indonesia. Why is Babes Romualdez, our ambassador in the United States, so active here? What is his interest? I-explain natin yan mamaya. Okay, next slide. I'm sorry, bear with me, no? Medyo mahaba to. But wala na naman tayong space, no, sa mainstream media. So dito na natin buhos lahat. So, ito kasi yan, no? So, those who are following the narrative, tinatawag na kaming traitor because we would like to analyze the facts. We would like to analyze the situation holistically, in a more balanced way, to understand the historical context. Because Ito alam to ng mga intellectuals, no? Ng mga Filipino intellectuals. Eh siguro naman, no? Stand up and defend real scholarship. You know that a behavior cannot be explained on its own. It has to be explained within its context, within its situation. Alam din to ni Justice Carpio. Ikaw ba, Justice Carpio, pag ikaw ay nagja-judge at may naghabla, sinampal po ako nito, hindi mo ba pakikinggan ang nasasakdal? Ganyan ba tayo, ang justice system natin? Hindi natin pwedeng pakinggan ang nasasakdal. Kasi dapat doon lang tayo sa naghahabla. Matatalino naman itong mga to eh. Supreme Court Justice nga ito eh. Hindi ba yan ang very basic premise ng hustisya? Na dapat mong pakinggan ang nasasakdal at dapat mong balansihin ang kanilang mga istorya upang malaman mo ang iyong magiging desisyon. Yan ang hustisya. Ang scale ba ng hustisya ay dapat ito ay nakatagbingi pabor sa naghahabla? Hindi ba nang ganyan ang ating kultura? Saan galing yung kultura na yan? Bakit bigla ninyong itinapon ang ganitong mga values natin? Dahil lamang sa gusto ninyong awayin ng mga ordinaryong Pilipino, ang China. Pero ang inyong mayayaman na mga kabarkada ay pwedeng kumita sa kanilang mga business deals sa China. Ipaliwanag nyo nga ito sa amin. Bakit iba ang approach ninyo sa mayayaman ng bansang ito tungkol sa issue na ito? Pero sa mga mahihirap at katulad namin na payak lamang ang pamumuhay, ay gusto nyo kaming mag-aklas na at pumunta sa gera kapag ang Philippine National Navy ay masabuyan lamang ng tubig ng Chinese Coast Guard. Saan nyo hinuhugot ang mga konsepto na ito? Ako po ay nag-aral sa The Hague, sa Leiden University. Ang The Hague po, ang sentro ng international law sa mundo. Ikaw, Babes Romualdez, nakita ko ang CV mo. Siyempre, titingnan mo ang background, no? Kung ano bang pinaghuhugutan nito. Wala kang pinag-aralan sa international law. Wala kang pinag-aralan sa international relations. Ang kursong tinapos mo ay business administration. So ako rin naman, Babes Romualdez, nagtapos din ako ng kursong business administration sa human resource management lamang, no? Sa Open University of Hong Kong. At alam namin ang takbo ng utak ng mga katulad mo na gustong magnegosyo. Sino ba ang unang mamamatay sa gera? Una bang mamamatay sa gera ang mayayaman na nasa Forbes Park? O ang mga mangingisda na ginagamit ninyo para sa inyong personal na agenda? Ayaw nyo kaming magsalita. Dahil kapag kami ay nagsalita at marinig ng mas marami pang tao, baka hindi nyo na makuha ang gusto nyong mahangad para sa kapakanan ng inyong bulsa at ng inyong pamilya. Ano ba ang sinabing primary issue ng mga Pilipino ngayon? Gutom. Mataas na presyo ng kuryente. Korupsyon sa gobyerno. Paulit-ulit na sistema ng gobyerno na ang pinapalitan lamang natin ay ang magnanakaw. At kung sino ang manggagadyo sa atin. Di ba? So, sino ba ang tunay na kalaban ng mga Pilipino? Sino ba ang dahilan kung bakit ang taas ng kuryente sa ating bansa? Kung bakit ang taas ng kagutuman sa ating bansa dahil napakataas ng presyo ng pagkain? May nabasa akong news article recently. Ang sabi ang taas nung survey 120,000 yung na-survey. Ang mga bata raw ngayon ay lumalaki na, karamihan ay lumalaki ng malnourished. Stunted growth. The reason? Mahalang pagkain. Bakit? Bakit gusto nyo kaming magalit sa nagsaboy ng tubig sa Philippine Coast Guard? Pero ayaw nyo kaming magalit sa inyong nagsasamantala sa Pilipinas mula nung panahon pa ng Spanish colonization. Kayo rin naman yung mga pamilyang kumita ng Spanish colonization, American colonization, panahon ni Marcos, panahon uli ni Marcos. Hindi ba tama yan? Mali ba yan? Sasabihin kami ni Babes Romualdez, Diyos ko day. Diyos ko, Babes Romualdez. Alam ng mga Pilipino ang karakas ng mga Romualdez sa bansang ito. Napakayaman ninyong mga Romualdez, pero tingnan ninyo ang inyong probinsya. Yan ba ang pinagmamalaki ninyong moralidad? Na kayo ay dinidisplay ninyo ang yaman ninyo sa sanlibutan, pero ang mga nasasakupan ninyo ay walang makain? Kahit kapitalista, mahihiya sa inyo. Dahil hindi capitalism ang inyong ginagawa. Ang ginagawa ninyo ay pandarambong sa bayan. Sabi nyo, bawal namin tingnan. Kasi para sa kanila, judgment sa kanila na pag tiningnan namin ang historical context at lalo naming maintindihan ang sitwasyon, ay maiintindihan namin kung bakit ito ginagawa ng China. Bakit ba ito mali? Bakit sa tingin nila ito ay mali? Bakit? Next slide. Ito ay si Justice Radha Binod Pal. Siguro hindi ito ay nakikilala. Siya ay isang Indian international legal scholar. Siya ang nag-iisang dissenting opinion sa International Military Tribunal for the Far East. Ito yung tribunal laban sa Japan, sa mga military officers ng Japan. Nag-iisa siyang dissenting opinion. O syempre, na-encounter ko lang to sa The Hague, no? Hindi ko naman na-encounter to dito. Hindi ko naman alam na meron palang ganito. So ako ay pumunta sa Peace Library sa The Hague. At aking binasa ang kanyang dissenting opinion. The original copy na naka-imbak sa Peace Library sa The Hague. Nakapit-bahay ko lang naman sa The Hague, no? Ang kanyang analysis ay ang kanyang judgment, not guilty ang mga Hapon. Kaya ito si Justice Pal, meron tong shrine sa Japan. You know, that's why the Japanese should remember the judgment of Justice Pal, or what it actually means. What Justice Pal said was, the actions of Japan cannot be separated from the actions of the Western imperialists in Asia. He said that he doesn't condone the actions of the Japanese, but it doesn't mean that the Japanese should be the only one that should be guilty. Because for every action, there is a reaction. You cannot understand a behavior, babalik tayo, without understanding the context. So what Justice Pal said is, Justice Carpio, you listen. Questions of law are not decided in an intellectual quarantine area in which legal doctrine and the local history and all else is forcibly excluded. We cannot afford to be ignorant of the world in which dispute arise. That's what Justice Pal said, the only dissenting opinion to the tribunal against Japan. And this has been my inspiration in looking at every conflict. I read this in 2011, no, during my first year in The Hague, because this is our first lesson, war. And this is very relevant. So you cannot understand the Ayungin Shoal incident by just looking at that particular moment. You'll have to learn the history, okay, of the conflict and the history that produced the conflict itself. Next slide. Okay. Oh, wala pang kino-quote na Chinese, ha? Because it's not necessary. Okay. So this is a quote from R.P. Anand. No? He's another Indian international legal scholar. Magaling to si R.P. Anand eh. No? His paper is entitled Maritime Practice in Southeast Asia until 1600 AD and the Modern Law of the Sea. Sabi niya, i-quote ko yung, babasahin natin ang buo. While the general practice of freedom of navigation and unobstructed maritime commerce continued to prevail in the Indian Ocean and the East Indies until the beginning of the 15th century. Remember that year, 15th century. When, as we have seen, the Portuguese for the first time tried to destroy it in Europe, the situation was entirely different. From the 13th century, after a period of wild anarchy, following the fall of the Roman Empire, European countries started to making wide claims over large areas of the oceans. Thus, besides preposterous claims by Spain and Portugal, Venice assumed the sovereignty of the whole of the Adriatic Sea, and Genoa followed her example in the Ligurian Sea. England became mistress of the undefined British seas, and Denmark blocked the Baltic by her closure of the Sound and claimed sovereignty of the northern seas. All these claims gave rise to innumerable dispute about fisheries, trading, and navigation, and these disputes not infrequently led to sanguinary wars. Sounds familiar? Sounds like what's happening right now in our part of the world. Because the truth, the historical truth is, freedom of navigation originated in Asia. It originated in Asia. I know this for a fact because Hugo Grotius, the patron saint of the laws of the sea, he's actually studied in Leiden. Kaya nga ang isang legal center sa Leiden, Hugo Grotius ang tawag eh. Where I studied. So I know where Hugo Grotius got the idea. Got the idea in Asia. We have freedom of navigation in Asia for millennia. For a long time in our history. What destroyed that freedom of navigation? The Europeans. They destroyed everything. And then, the Europeans implanted in our brains their practices. We divide lands, and we divide the seas. Look what's happening right now in Africa. Diba? Are you following the news in Africa? It's the same forces of history acting in two different regions. Do you remember what the EU Commissioner President said when she came here? For the first time, she said, the situation in Ukraine and South China Sea are the same. Essentially what she said. Hindi ako maluloko ng mga Europeans na ito. 12 years akong tumira sa Europe. Nagtrabaho ko under a Dutch senator na dating ambassador ng Netherlands. Ang professor ko ng Foreign Policy and Diplomacy, a former NATO Secretary General. So alam ko yung mga galawang ito, no? Europe lacks resources. It will die in a few decades if it doesn't address it. We might go back to the Middle Ages, no? Because they don't have resources. They want to get it somewhere else. So this is the context of the history. The traditional order of Asia was destroyed by the Europeans and by the Americans. Because the Americans are essentially Europeans, no? So they came here, they fraternized with the colonizers because they both belong to the civilized nations of the world, as they claimed. And then they wanted to rule this part of our world. The United States and Tariela, Justice Carpio, etc., ambassador, love mentioning freedom of navigation. Diba? Freedom of navigation here, freedom of navigation there, etc., etc. What do they actually mean? Okay. Ito ang hindi alam ng mga Pilipino. At dapat nilang malaman, no? Dahil ginagawa silang mangmang ng mga ito. Walang interes ang mga Amerikanong i-educate tayo sa mundo. Wala. Ang interes lamang ng mga Amerikano ay hulmahin ang ating mga utak para maloko na naman tayo katulad ng ginawa nila kay Aguinaldo. Freedom of navigation. For the longest time in Asian history, only meant freedom of commercial navigation. Merchant ships. Sinong nagbago nito? Ayan. Who wanted to change this? Of course, the usual suspects, no? The colonizers. The United Kingdom, France, and the United States. And of course, Netherlands, the great naval powers of the Western barbaric civilization. Kailan lang nila ito gustong baguhin? 1950s. Kaya yung sinasabi nila na Matagal na merong ganitong freedom of navigation of warships. It's not true. Malaking kalokohan. In fact, sa Corfu Channel case, I believe this is between the United Kingdom and I forgot sino yung isang bansa, but just search for it. The Corfu Channel case, no? The American representative said there, warships threatens. Merchant ships do not. That's why they can freely pass. That's the stand of the American representative in the Corfu Channel case. Warships threatens. Merchant ships do not. How many news have you heard that China actually stopped a merchant ship in the South China Sea? Let's stick to facts. Wala. The dispute of China and the United States are about the freedom of navigation of warships, which the people of the third world were against. They were against the freedom of navigation of warships. Ang nag-insist lamang yung mga Europeans at mga Amerikano. That's why, you know, a lot of our Asian neighbors, they require prior authorization and notification for warships to enter their territorial sea. Ayaw yan ng Amerika. Yan lang ang ayaw ng Amerika. Wala namang pipigil lang merchant ships. Okay. Last 5 minutes na lang daw ako, but I will protest the Okay, so what actually do we want, no? We want diplomacy, like 70% of the Filipinos say na gusto nila. Para lang sa edukasyon, kaalaman ng mga Pilipino, ano bang ibig sabihin ng diplomasya? Ito ay mula sa Oxford Handbook of Modern Diplomacy. Okay? Sabi dito, diplomacy, it is about looking for and finding common ground. About forging agreement and achieving a balance of benefits that will allow each party to go home with at least some degree of satisfaction. Yon. Okay. Ano pa ang sabi? Ano pa ba ang characteristic ng isang magaling na diplomat? Next slide, please. Sabi, diplomacy requires patience and an open mind. A diplomat who shows genuine interest in the history and culture of the country to which she is accredited, who refrains passing peremptory judgments on the behavior of its political leaders and the mores of its people, who listens more than she preaches, will easily win the hearts and the confidence of her interlocutors. That's diplomacy. Kaya itong mga pinaghuhugutan nila ng diplomacy, hindi natin maintindihan kung saan ang galing. Where are they getting this? Now, sabi nila, Sasot, gusto mo mag-negotiate. What do you mean by that? Kasi ito ang stand nila, no? Ito ang stand nila. Before ng negotiation, first and foremost, China must acknowledge the jurisdiction of the Permanent Court of Arbitration and respect its July 2016 ruling, recognizing the Philippines' territory. And this is not debatable. An emerging strategy by the Philippine government taps into the power of public opinion. Distinguished maritime and security experts agreed that exposing China's activities within the Philippine territory to the public is a strategic move. Ano ba yung problemang nire-resolve nila dito? Okay. Ano yung problemang nire-resolve nila dito? Okay. Can you go to the next slide? More. Okay, babalik tayo dito, no? Okay. Ay, sorry. Okay. So, syempre, kailangan natin mag-negotiate. Dahil wala namang nangyayari sa international negotiations na hindi na, sa international relations na hindi na uuwi sa negotiations. Ano ba pinag-i-input nila sa utak ng mga Pilipino? Nag-aral ba talaga ito? Tapos tayo yung intellectually stupid? Sabi ni Babes Romualdez, hinahamon kita. Magbigay ka ng instance sa international history or international conflict history na yung conflict ay hindi rin nagtapos sa negotiation. Nakipag-negotiate nga sa Nazi Germany or sa Germany after World War II. Twice. Nakipag-negotiate nga sa Japan. Sinabuyan ka ng tubig, ayaw mo makipag-negotiate? Ano ito? Saan tayo nakakita sa international history, no? Na sinabuyan ng tubig, naghimagsik at isinulong ang bansa sa gera. Bakit kami yung intellectually stupid ngayon? Okay. So, balik tayo dito, no? So, sabi nila, hindi kami makikipag-negotiate until China recognizes the arbitration award. So, that's your ideal position. So, what is the walk-off point of the Philippines? It's the same as the ideal position. Saan ka nakakita na negotiation na your ideal position is the same as your bottom line? And nagturo ako ng international negotiations sa Maastricht University. This doesn't appear in our lesson at all because this is stupid and doesn't happen in reality. Ngayon, gusto mo ganun yung ideal position mo. Ano ngayon yung better alternative to a negotiated agreement? Eh, syempre, hindi mo makukuha yung ideal mo. So, paano mo makukuha yung ideal mo outside the concept of negotiation? Gera. Makukuha mo pa yung ideal position mo because of war? Look at Ukraine right now. Is it getting what it wants? No. Because its ideal position, it's the same as its bottom line position. Eh kung gusto mo pala na ganoon, na yung ideal mo, bottom line position mo rin, o di ganun din ang gagawin ng China. O kami rin. No? O paano kayo mag-uusap? Is negotiation possible? Na pag yung ideal position mo ay the same ng iyong walk-off point? No, because you don't have a zone of possible agreement. And negotiation is only possible if this is present. But, you know, yung mga intellectuals daw sa atin, tanggalin natin ang zone of possible agreement, but still, they expect that it will end peacefully. Para mga nagwelga, di ba? Utak NPA eh. Hindi namin nakuha ang gusto namin. Mag-aaklas kami. Maghihimagsik, pupunta ng bundok. Gera. Ano nangyari sa mga NPA ngayon? Corn beef, di ba? Okay. So what do we do? Sabi nila, can we go back to previous slide? Malapit na ako matapos. I'm so sorry. Okay. So what do we do? Okay? Because the people, no, ini-interview ng mainstream media do not know what they're talking about. Okay? We don't negotiate based on position. We negotiate based on interests. Okay. Anong pinagkaiba nito? No? Kasi marami kasi sa mga Pilipino do not know how to negotiate. No? Ano ibig sabihin nito? Bibigyan ko ng madaling example. Ha? Halimbawa ako ay galit ako sa kapitbahay ko dahil yung aso niya is tahol lang tahol tuwing natutulog ako. So my position is, patayin mo yung aso mo. That's my position. Eh yung kalaban mo, ang position niya, hindi ko papatayin yung aso ko. Is negotiation possible in that scenario? No. So what do? You go beyond the position, you know? You go beyond what you want to what you really need. Ano yung need ko talaga? Kung bakit gusto kong patayin mo aso niya? Because I want to sleep peacefully at night. Now, are there other solutions other than killing the dog? I can name a lot. You know, baka pwede namang i-train mo yung aso mo. Baka naman pwedeng, you know, mag-negotiate tayo. Na pag weekend, sige, hayaan mo yung aso mo. Pero pag weekdays naman, is ilayo mo naman siya dito. Kuting, or baka pwede mong palitan na gawin mo na lang na kuting ng norte. So baka pwedeng gano'n, no? Maraming alternative. So ngayon ikaw, na dinidemandan, na patayin mo yung aso mo, hindi ka na doon naka-box in. Nandun ka na sa need. Eh pareho naman pala kami ng kagustuhan nito. Because positions are never reconcilable. That's basic in negotiations. Hello naman. Napakatiba, this is negotiation 101. No, this is negotiation level 1. Okay. So what do? We negotiate based on interest. Okay. Bakit? Kasi nga, doon mo makikita yung mutual interest mo. You can never have mutual position. Kaya nga kayo may conflict eh. Because your positions are not mutual. So, you want to move from a position na hindi kayo mutual to a position that you have mutual interest, and that is diplomacy. So, tanong sa akin, bakit may mutual interest ba dyan? Ganyan talaga ang China at Pilipinas. Well, ito lang yan, no? The South China Sea is the common sea of Asians. Because it's our common sea, matagal na natin ito pare-parehong ginagamit. We have common interest in terms of fishing. We have common interest in terms of the oil, energy, requirements. Kailangan nating mabuhay, no? We need them. Ngayon, bakit hindi natin ma-frame ito as a mutual interest? Because we are bargaining based on position. It is a winner-takes-all strategy if you bargain in terms of position. At sa winner-takes-all strategy, there are only two outcomes. Either you get everything or you get nothing. So ano po bang chance? Justice Carpio. At kung sino man dyan, no? Babes Romualdez. Na if we keep negotiating based on position, makukuha natin yung everything. And paano? Then dito sila sa ilalim. Ayun na nga. Baka kasi kaya hindi natin makita ang ating mutual interest sa ating kapitbahay ay dahil may dayo na nakikialam. Di ba? Mag-ano na tayo? Let's be frank about this. So, hindi ka po pwedeng pumunta ng negotiation na ideal position mo is the same as your bottom line position. At yan ang mali sa atin. Na paulit-ulit, inuulit-ulit ng mainstream media. Mag-interview naman kayo ng matalino. Diyos ko, Lord. Kita mo, nabanggit na rin naman ni Kamentong si Richard Hidarian. No? I'm so sorry, Richard. Ha? Ilalaglag na kita. No? Noong 2019, nagdebate kami nito. Alam nyo naman, nagdebate kami niya. No? Siyempre, of course, leading to the debate is nag-uusap, in preparation, etc. Because we have mutual interest to elevate the discussion. Eh, siya, mabait, ganyan. Sinabi pa naman sa akin, no? Alam mo, Sass, tama ka naman sa South China Sea arbitration. Huwag mo kung anuhin Hidarian, I have your voice message telling me that. Ba't hindi mo masabi sa publiko? You are intellectually dishonest. So we have to negotiate based on interest rather than position. We have a lot of common interests. Eh dito dinidiscuss sa mainstream media eh. And that it is achievable. Sabi nila, hindi raw achievable because the Constitution forbids it. Diyos ko, por Diyos por santo, no? Why don't you pass a law and declare the West Philippine Sea a special economic zone? Tapos ang problema mo sa Constitution. Diba? May mga special economic zone tayo sa buong Pilipinas where we can be flexible about applying our economic laws and etc. And we even actually allow 100% ownership of mining now. Oh, bakit ayaw mo dito sa West Philippine Sea? What is so special about the West Philippine Sea that you cannot turn it into a special economic zone when in fact the exclusive economic zone is not even part of your territory? And that is the truth of the matter. That there's no concept in international law na nagsasabi na the exclusive economic zone is part of your territory. Binibigyan mo nga, nagkakaroon ka nga ng special security zone sa United States within your territory. Diba? Okay, to end, can we, nabobore na yung mga tao. To end, last slide please. Next. Ito ay sinabi ni Harry Holkeri, no? Isa siyang sikat na Finnish diplomat, is very good in conflict resolution. If you come to a negotiation table saying you have the final truth, that you know nothing but the truth, and that is final, you will get nothing. Every businessman knows that. Ito, nandito si Peter, businessman to si Peter. Ikaw ba, Peter, pwede ka bang mag-negotiate? Sabi mo, gusto ko lang yung akin, wala rin lang. Ay, di ba utak NPA yan? Maging utak kapitalista naman tayo. Di ba? Bigyan ko yun kayo ng example na magamit na natin itong whiteboard. Okay. So imagine you have a joint exploration on oil. Okay? According to people I talk to in the government, pumapahayag na nga yung China before kahit 70-30. 70 to the Philippines, 30 to them. Marami, ang dami nilang gustong proposal. Meron pa na, okay lang, kahit 60-40, gawin nyo rin kaming market kasi we also need the oil. Okay. Sabi natin, doon muna tayo sa 60-40, no? Okay. China. PH. Of course, this is your share on equity, no? So, this is 60-40. Yung mga Pilipino, hindi mo pare kailangan 100 kami, ganyan. Utak NPA. Utak NPA yan. Utak NPA. Paano ang utak kapitalista? Paano? Nanonood ba kayo ng Dragon's Den? Di ba, paano ang utak kapitalista? Okay. Because you have a larger resources. Sige. Pagbibigyan kita sa 40. Sa amin yung 60. So, pag nakukuha ka na ng earnings, what do? You invest it. And then, you would be able to buy back, to buy their share. Di ba ganyan ang kapitalista? You buy them out. Di ba? This is why, negotiating based on position is bad. Dapat negotiating based on interest. Kasi kung based on interest, halimbawa, let's say ito kahit sa fisheries, joint fisheries, etc. Sabi mo, gusto mo pa rin, gusto ko pa rin ng more, di ba? And you can no longer get something more from this deal. So when you negotiate based on interest, the other party can offer value outside this one. The other party will ask you, bakit mo ba gusto yung oil? What do you need? Kasi we need to develop our country. Of course, the other party will ask, why? What do you need for your development? We need subways. We need hospitals. We need this, ganyan, kaya we need more money. But the other party can say, okay, what if this is my offer? Okay, I want 50% of the share. But I will give you 3 hospitals. I will build you subway. I will build you speed train. Pero hindi, gusto talaga nila patayan, di ba? Utak, NPA. Oh, di ba? That's how a capitalist think. And China are good businessmen. Kaya nga sila yumaman within 40 years na natatameme na yung Amerika, di ba? Because the Chinese are good negotiators, no? Hindi mo talaga sila mababali-bali. Kaya kayo, kung yung mga diplomats natin ay hindi marunong, humanap kayo ng mas magaling sa kanila. Diba? Why do you need to keep on repeating the same mistake of the former diplomats by appointing them again and sila pa rin yung magagawa? And they never resolve it. My God, por Diyos por Santo, the South China Sea conflict is already 50 years from the perspective of the Philippines. The same approach. Until now, nang nabago lang, mayroon tayong arbitration ruling. But that's nothing because the arbitration ruling is just justification for your position. So, nandun ka pa rin sa level ng position, kailangan you go deep to the interest. Pero kung gusto pa rin nila yung approach nila, pwede pa rin naman makapaghintay ang mga Pilipino ng another 50 years, di ba? Ayun ay kung hindi pa tayo, napatay, no? Or Ana, kung hindi pa tayo na ano yung sabi ni Baser Maltese na lynch mob. Ganyan. So, di ba? Ano daw? Nauna ang gera. Ayun na nga, di ba? Kung mauna ang gera. Kasi nga, you have to bargain according to your actual capabilities. Kasi ang ginagawa ng mga ito, niloloko ang mga Pilipino. Sabi nila, may alliance kasi tayo sa United States. Dahil sa may alliance tayo sa United States, makukuha natin yung gusto natin. Ito na naman. Yan dito. Okay. That's borrowed power. That's not your power. That's borrowed power. Okay. In business, borrowings are under which side of the ledger? Assets or liabilities? Di ba? That's a liability. Okay. It's a liability, di ba? So for 50 years, we have this Kalayaan Island Group concept, no? Siyempre hindi natin siya magamit kasi nga may dispute. Ayaw rin natin mag-enter ng joint development dahil gusto natin atin lahat. In business, what is a non-performing asset? Is it an asset or a liability? So what do? We turn the non-performing asset into a performing asset. And how does a capitalist do that? They actually get a deal, no? that could actually make them better off. Right now, this is the amount we are getting, from this non-performing asset. And then we are spending how much in order to protect a non-performing asset. So nasa negative ka na, negative balance, di ba? Tapos gusto pa nila is mamatay pa tayo. Okay, so ilan ba yan? Let's say 100,000. Okay, so we will die 100,000 in order to protect 100,000 dead. Gaano ba katagal tong gerang ito? Ano bang envision nila? 2 years, 10 years? Sabihin natin 5 years. Okay, -5. So -5 years in your development as a nation. Matindi ang 5 years na yan, ha? And a lot of negative balance. So, paano ka ngayon mapupunta sa positive balance? Ito yung cost. So, mas mabuti na siguro na, okay, dahil ang ma-achieve ko lang ngayon ay 5, mas mabuti na ang 5 sa 0. Ngayon, kung maging mas malakas ako, I will just buy China back. Bakit hindi tayo magkaroon ng ganyang ambisyon? No? Yayaman din kami at bibili namin yung kinuha sa amin ng China. That's more civilized. That's more peaceful. That's how a capitalist think. Stop thinking like an NPA. Pinapatay nyo na nga yung mga NPA, pinalitan nyo naman yung pag-iisip nila. Eto na. Eto na, ending. Okay. Bakit hindi nila ito maisip? Makinig, ha? Makinig ka rin, Habibs Romualdez. Para sa'yo to. Okay. Ito, meron tayong tinatawag na principal-agent relationship. Okay. Principal. Agent. Okay. In our context, the principal is the Philippines. Okay. When I say the Philippines, the nation, it doesn't only include this generation. This includes the future generation ad infinitum. That's your principal. You don't only make a decision based on current generation. Your decision affects all generations. So yung agent, ito na yan, sina Tariela. Diba? Sina Romualdez. Okay. Carpio. Okay. You are just agents, no? You are just a historical actor with a specific historical context. You are not the Philippines. You are not our principal. Okay? We are your principal. And the future generation is your principal. And in thinking in terms of a nation, ewan ko ba kasi hindi tayo. Nation is invented in Europe, A nation is a transcendental concept. Ibig sabihin, it exists, you have to imagine it existing forever. Across time. That's why the ethic, the true patriotic ethic is called intergenerational ethic. You cannot be patriot because of temporary feelings and passions. Ano yun? Emotions of patriots. You cannot make a rational decision based on emotions. Tanungin niyo yung mga asawa niyo, Romualdez, saka Tariela. Do you want them being emotional when you're making decision? No. So kayo, what is the interest of the principal? This generation and future generation. Continued development, peace, order, modernization, industrialization, good education, jobs, etc. All those things. So what is the interest of the agents? Because that is the principal agent problem. Okay? Sometimes the agent's interests are not aligned with the interests of the principal. And that you create a principal agent problem. Okay? Kaya bigla ka narinig, war. How much do you think the country would spend on war in terms of lives, in terms of misdevelopment? Okay? Parang hindi pa nagsawa yung mga Pilipino na nag-host sila ng World War II. Baka gusto pa nila World War III din yung i-host. Pero siguro palitan natin yung pag-iisip na yan ng mga utak pulbura, no? Maybe the right dream for the Filipinos is not to host World War III, but the Olympics. And you can only do that if you can develop your country with all the means possible. And you do that with with partnerships with countries that are devoted to your development and not to your destruction, because for them, the destruction of your country is a strategic move for them in order to weaken China militarily. And that's the truth of it. And I'm so sorry, Biggs Romualdez, if I'm intellectually stupid. It just so happened that I am the little child in the emperor's new clothes who saw that the emperor is actually naked and that the swindlers are convincing the Filipino people that the emperor is actually wearing a golden robe. Thank you po.
Amazing lecture. Akala ko marami na akong alam sa binabasa sa news. Every time si Sass, Rogando, Sassot magsalita, enlightening and thought-provoking. Sa Tagalog, nagbibigay liwanag, saka nakakapagpukaw ng pag-iisip. Sobrang galing. Thank you very much for your crash course on history, international diplomacy, and logical thinking, critical thinking. Thank you very much for reminding us wag emotions, dapat logic. May time tayo for a few questions kasi lampas 12 o'clock na. Can welcome for a few questions. Please, short questions lang for our panelists here to answer. May unang tanong dito, sandali lang, may minessage ang mga media dito ang questions. One of the questions, paano pa nag-umpisa itong Ayungin Shoal? May tanong dito, what provoked or led China to react? Ito sa isang media, no? What provoked or led China to react in the Ayungin Shoal like spraying water cannon against the Philippine Coast Guard? What provoked or led China daw? Kasi di ba 30, 40 years stable naman ang situation in general, sabi ni Councilor Minister kanina.
Because there is some sort of an agreement. No? This is like a modus vivendi about the Ayungin Shoal na po pwede ang mga humanitarian supply. But construction, hindi po pwede. Yan ang ano nila. No? Pero I will just give you a background on the Ayungin Shoal. And this is what you need to understand about the Chinese, no? About Chinese foreign policy. I studied Chinese international relations in the United States, actually, at UCLA. This is how they think. They never forget their history. Everything for them has a significant meaning. And that meaning gets carried over. Okay? If you are their friend, you will be their friend forever. Look at Kissinger. Look at Lee Kuan Yew. Even Lee Kuan Yew criticizes China, ha? Nung nabubuhay pa siya. But he's very respected still in China, even Kissinger. So the story of the Ayungin Shoal, it was a retaliation of the Philippines to the Chinese reclamation. Not reclamation. Reclamation na ba yung nangyari noong 1994? Or occupation and building of more than stilts sa Mischief Reef, no? There must be some misunderstanding there, you know, from the Philippine side that there was deliberate deception from the Chinese na sabi nyo, ano lang yan, stilts lang yan per fisherman, bakit ganyan na? So, that was 1995, 1994. So, ang retaliation natin in 1999. In June 1999. Now, among all the features in the Spratlys, the Ayungin Shoal has a huge emotional significance to the history of the Chinese, especially to their diplomatic community. Why?
Because in May 1999, May 9, 1999, during the Kosovo War, the NATO bombed the Chinese embassy in Belgrade. Well, the United States, no? Sabi ng United States is an accent, okay. So, they were, ang gulo na sa China ng panahon na to. There was a huge protest all over the world about what happened. All the Chinese suddenly rose up, no? In order to avenge what happened. So, several of their diplomats died. In, tatlo daw, 3 diplomats. So we occupied Ayungin Shoal during the time that they were mourning. Hindi naman same day. June tayo nag-OP. It's within the period that we're mourning. So May 9 nangyari yung yung bombing. Pero we occupied it in June ata or late May. Late May or something like that. So we occupied it during the time of their weakness. They were mourning. They were devastated. They do not know how to react to the bombing of their embassy. I'm pretty sure the military of China would like to go to war already against the United States. So imagine the work of the diplomats during that time. The Ayungin Shoal is being occupied. Their military might want to have a war against China. So whenever they see the Ayungin Shoal, no, they get reminded of this incident. And this is something that you have to understand when dealing with a civilization state. Because China is not just an ordinary nation state. It is a civilization state. It has a memory longer than the memory of every one of us combined.
Again, napakaraming mga legal angles na pwedeng pag-usapan. But as the counselor earlier said, the DCM of the embassy explained, the modern basis, kasi may historical basis of hundreds of years, the modern basis for these claims today of China is the Potsdam Declaration of 1943, o Cairo Declaration of 1943, and Potsdam Declaration of 1945. These are international declarations. Kasama po ang 5 powers ng United Nations dyan. And the 3 powers, of course, the allied powers. So yan, kahaba po, kalayo po ang basis po yan. The Philippine claim to Ayungin is not even in the Treaty of Paris of 1899. 1898. No? So modern po ang claims natin after the UNCLOS ratification. That was 1993, 92. But anyways, yeah, 1992. So ganyan po ang chronology ng mga events. No? Now, China's 9-dash line is not a fixed line. It is a very flexible line. Because from my interpretation and some other analyst interpretation, scholars, it is just a principle, a matter of principle of claiming so that in the negotiating tables, everybody is included, including China. Now, the second Thomas Shoal became controversial for the Philippines and China in 1999 because of the grounding of the vessel. But clearly, there is some verbal agreement during the time of President Estrada. Now, it's not written. There were some discussions also during the time of Gloria Arroyo. But there are documents where you can extract an admission that there was an arrangement, which Bobby Tiglao already presented today. There are documents where it is implied that we had agreed because we also moved another grounded vessel in the same vicinity. But these are for interpretation. The point of China is, let us meet halfway. China successfully resolved 12 out of 15 territorial disputes. China is is a country with the most number of bordering states. And they resolved some of the biggest, including with Russia, that involves almost 1 million square kilometers in favor of Russia. Marami pong na-resolve with Vietnam po. Of course, the Tonkin Bay Cooperation Agreement and so on. I forget the technical name. So that is why China paulit-ulit ang sinasabi, let us meet halfway. But these war hawks na sila American boys are keep repeating that there is no compromise here. There is no compromise. So ano ba ang totoong gusto ng taong bayan? The interpretation of the Okta survey, of course, requires a bit more minute examination. But I think the general sentiment is still correct. The Filipinos don't want war. I think that's very much more clearly reflected in the reaction of the Pag-asa fishermen. So much more to say, but we have limited time.
Thank you very
Okay.
Thank you to Herman.
Okay.
Laurel.
Let me read a comment from the audience, no? Para mayroon din tayong interaction. Kasi
Marami pang tanong dito.
may Zoom tayo, maraming tao sa Zoom. So may nag-comment at syempre gusto kong basahin din.
Yeah.
Ang sabi dito ng isang, actually expert also in international law, but a Chinese expert in international law. Ang sabi niya, please
What
help
is her
read my
name?
comment. Dr. Yan. I think China and the Philippines should resume the Coast Guard Joint Committee established since 2016. Better for the two law enforcement agency to talk directly. Also, I sincerely wish the two sides could deal with the dispute under the BCM. The BCM is the bilateral consultation mechanism. It is urgent to start another conference this year. So this is a Chinese intellectual, or actually
His full
Dr.
name
Yan
again?
is also an
Yeah.
expert in international law. On the other hand, pagdating naman sa Ayungin Shoal, aside from the fact na sinabi nga ni Sass na medyo emotional nga ang China pag nababanggit yan, dahil nga, yun nga, yung time na yun, within that time frame, nabomba ang Chinese embassy sa Yugoslavia during that time. And the one who bombed it is the United States. There were 3 diplomats died, pero ang China that time was not yet a giant, was not yet economically affluent. At the same time, hindi pa malakas ang military nila. So what happened to them is they swallowed their pride. And they, ang hirap nun kung titignan mo sa bansa na sobrang laki. Ang tama si Sass, it's not a nation state per se. Huwag nating titignan ang China na ganun lang. It's a big nation, it's a civilizational state. So iba mayroon silang history for 5,000 years na kung saan nakaangkla yon kung paano din sila nagbibehave. So we have to understand China as a civilizational state para din maintindihan natin how we can deal with China. Hindi yung tipong sugod lang tayo ng sugod, hindi naman natin naiintindihan kung sino ang ating kausap at yung kabilang partido. Kasi kailangan mong, if you really want to negotiate and if you really want to have a good deal, you have to understand the other side. At kung anong interest nila, anong position nila, and the sensitivities para mag-meet halfway kayo. Hindi pwede yung halagera na lang. Ito lang amin. Hindi na pwedeng mabago ang posisyon namin. Wala hong mangyayari sa Pilipinas. At the end of the day, if you really look at realities at the moment and the asymmetries between China and the Philippines in every aspect, may it be geography, may it be political influence in the world, not only in Asia, may it be economy, may it be in size, may it be in population, may it be geography. Malaki ang asymmetry, malaki sila, maliit tayo. And we could not rely on the United States to what? To fight for us over what? Over fish and over what? A shoal na hindi nakikita kapag high tide, only low tide? Come on, give me a break. Do you really think the Americans are that stupid? Come on. Yun pa, baka. But on the other hand, just to mention, kasi ang tanong kanina kung ano yung claim ng China on this, I will just read my statement para lang maklaro at hindi ako magkamali. As far as the Chinese are concerned, their claim in the South China Sea is not necessarily only based dun sa sinasabing nine-dash line. There's such a thing as historical rights. Yun ang kanilang basihan ng kanilang claim. May basihan tayo sa atin kasi sovereign rights easy on clause, no? Sa kanila historical rights. Most recently during the second Sino or Chinese-Japanese War that coincided with the World War II, Japan invaded the whole of the South China Sea, including Hainan. Hainan is actually a province of China, and even until it's part of the mainland, Paracel and Spratly and the Pratas Islands. After Second World War, Japan formally surrendered the islands to the Republic of China, ROC, and that was Actually, right now, ROC is what you call Taiwan, you know? Kasi part yan ng China ang Taiwan eh. And until now, no, on one China policy. So, under the Treaty of Taipei, PORC defeated ROC in the Chinese Civil War. May civil war eh. Na-defeat ang ROC, which is Taiwan at the moment, no? So, kaya sila nandun, kaya nga nagkakaroon ka ng conflict, may internal problem sila on that eh. When the United Nations recognized the People's Republic of China or the PRC as the only legitimate government of China under its One China policy, PROC became the successor in interest of the Republic of China under international law, specifically the UN Charter. As Taiwan became a province of China, China has always regarded the South China Sea as an archipelago. Magaling si Sass dito, ma-explain niya yan ng mabuti. Or a single unit. Under customary international law, the requirements for sovereignty are actual occupation, effective administration and control, and if necessary, defense of its possession. PROC is effectively enforcing its de jure and de facto possession of the archipelago. De jure sovereignty refers to the legal right to own the territory. De facto sovereignty refers to the factual ability to do so. Credit to Kaado, kasi si Kaado ito, siya yung author nito, siya yung nagsulat nito. On the other hand, kung titignan mo, ang claim ng China sa Ayungin Shoal and even some parts of the South China Sea is based, may claim sila na sovereignty at teritorya nila yan. Ang claim natin is sovereign rights. We really have to understand that these two concepts are not the same. Kanina pa ina-explain ni Sass yan. Ang hirap lang kasi sa media and even doon sa survey, kung titignan mo, ang nakalagay sa survey, territorial rights. There's no such thing as territorial rights, sovereign rights. Kahit sa survey lang, ang praising ng survey is even already, erroneous na siya eh. So alam mo yun yung mga sinasabi ko na we need to broaden our mind at probably study further the issue. Kasi kapag puro brabado lang tayo at sugod lang tayo ng sugod, it's very saddening to see na mauwi tayo sa gera over certain things na hindi naman pinag-aralan ng mabuti at puro brabado lang at emotion ang ginamit. Kasi if we deal with countries abroad or internationally, I think we need to be rational actor. Ini-emphasize na yan kanina. We need to be rational and we need to think like businessmen too, no? Saan ba ano ba ang best position ng Pilipinas? Makipag-gitgitan ka dyan or you strike a deal that you benefit instead of you end up in a precarious situation. So mas ganun siguro mag-isip tayo dapat bilang mga Pilipino. Huwag yung sugod lang sugod, tas wala ka naman palang bala at the end of the day. Baka mauwi tayo nito sa gera. So ayaw natin noon. Siguro, kaya nga nakakasad lang, no? Yung mga taong tulad sa amin na we're trying to explain the situation, we're trying to educate the public, at ayaw namin ng gera kasi wala namang panalo sa gera, lahat naman talo, nababansagan pang traitor at intellectually stupid. My God, for God's sake, give me a break. Okay? Thank you.
Intellectually brilliant sila. Short questions, short answers kasi it's almost 1 o'clock. May lunch tayo. Si Miss Lorraine, former Undersecretary Lorraine Marie Badoy, may tanong nasa Facebook Live, watching us via Facebook Live. Former Undersecretary Lorraine Marie T. Badoy. Question for Sass. What are the implications, if any, are there for the reckless statement made by the PCG via their spokesperson, Commodore J. Tariela? Question for Ms. Sass. Yes, follow up, yes. Why so?
Alam nyo, this is the problem with Philippine government. Our government is like the American government. Kanya-kanyang lakad, yung mga nasa ilalim ng presidente, kanya-kanyang statement, etc. Kasi, let me just give you a background, no? I actually asked this to, kay former President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo. Kasi remember, during the time of President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, there was a joint seismic mutual undertaking, JSMU, with China and Vietnam in their disputed area. So I asked Madam President, sabi ko, Madam President, wala bang debate to na nangyari sa gobyerno ninyo because we have a territorial dispute? Sabi niya, at the cabinet level, wala kaming debate. May debate sa bureaucratic level. And even in the United States at that time, ang debate is sa bureaucratic level. So they have their own interest, no? They're pursuing their own interest. Kasi the higher you are in the decision-making body, the more rational that you will become. Well, I assume not all governments, pero definitely kay GMA at least, no? So sabi niya, that was the suggestion daw kasi ni Speaker Jose de Venecia. Is Speaker Jose de Venecia. He's still alive, no? Alam mo yung si Speaker Jose de Venecia, 1970s pa yan, nag-advocate na yan ng joint development. Si Speaker Jose de Venecia, alam niya yung conflict na to at alam niya yung solution. So yun. So tinanong ko si Madam President. Sabi ko, Madam President, how about the United States? Did you talk to Bush about it? So sabi niya, yes, I did. I told the president, your officials are against my joint seismic mutual understanding with Vietnam and China. Ang sagot daw ni Bush sa kanya, they are against a research. So na iba yung nag-work dito. So yung pagdating kay Tariela, ako even naman ng panahon ni PRRD may mga ganyang lumilihis ng landas, no. Pero yun na nga na from China's side, kasi China will not hear you if you don't have an imprimatur from the highest decision making. Ikaw lang siguro, so hindi ka na lang papapasukin ng Hong Kong.
Thank you.
Do you remember that time na hindi pinapasok ng Hong Kong si former Secretary De Rosario? So that, si Carpio ba yan? So yun. So yun lang yun. It doesn't really have a gravity sa kanila kasi it's not a statement by the president. That's why, we have to credit Bongbong Marcos for being very level-headed on this issue.
Yeah, this is just 30 seconds, no?
Yes.
I am reminded now because it was part of my preparation, but I did not mention it. The baseless accusation against so-called traitors now for explaining the entire picture is reminiscent of the buildup of the neo-Nazis in Ukraine and the anti-Indonesian Chinese in 1964-65 that resulted in a pogrom against Indonesian Chinese with 500,000 murdered by rampaging, as Romualdez explained, no? What is his term? Rampaging mobs or something like that. So, delikado talaga yung ginawa ni Tariela. And I don't think he understands it.
Hindi. Let me just give you another historical context from our culture, no? Alam mo tayong mga Pilipino, madali talaga tayong mabuyo ng puti. During the Spanish colonization, the Chinese were already here, no? Even Chinese colonization, we were living with them in this country. Now, the Spaniards were threatened by the Chinese. Ang dami nila eh. Saka magagaling talaga sila sa negosyo eh, no? That was the So the Spaniards spread an intrigue among other inhabitants. Those are the Tagalogs, no? Naku, ang China sasakupin itong may balak sakupin itong Manila. Invasion. Narinig yan, di ba? Invasion. So what happened? The Spaniards, with the help of the native Tagalogs, massacred 20,000 Chinese. That was in 1600, and this was not the first instance, no? It also happened, I think, in Pampanga and something else. So we really have a history, no? As a people, na madali tayong mabuyo ng mga puti, no? Lalo na pag ang kalaban natin ay fellow Asians. Nagigets nyo? So dapat tayo, have we ever been angry with Europeans? Siguro panahon ni PRRD, parang ito si Lorraine Badoy, no? Tinawag pa nga silang pido. Di ba? Siguro panahon ni PRRD, pero historically, we were never angry with any white no matter how they raped us, no? Meron tayong Stockholm Syndrome. We really want to keep on the people who abused us. And we're happy doing that. So, yun lang.
Thank you very much. Question. Yes.
Madam.
Yes. Please, Lorraine, Madam.
Anyone, given the gravity of what Commodore Tariela said via the Philippine Coast Guard, no? Given what the gravity of what the Coast Guard said, because he's the spokesperson of the Coast Guard, is it possible that he issued that statement with the okay of the president? No? So therefore, how important is it for the president to distance himself from this statement, to make a very clear stand? How important is it?
PRRD did that during his time kasi ang dami nagsasalita, no? So PRRD ordered, walang magsasalita about this. Si Harry Roque lang.
So stable.
So you centralize the discourse kasi if you are a government official, you are the principal agent problem. You are the agent of the republic. So you represent the republic, no? Not just the present emotions, but the future generations. Do not plant the seeds of the destruction of this country. It's very important for the president to actually discipline his people. Because this is his subordinate. Just like Ambassador Babes Romualdez. Kasi alam mo, Ma'am Lorraine, no, what they're doing with the president is they're strangling the president and pushing him into a corner to actually pursue the course of action that they want. Nakausap ko na to si Bongbong Marcos before, no? Personal, etc. Hindi naman siya tanga. He's a very rational guy. In fact, he's intelligent. Kaya kung sinuportahan ito, no? Hello naman, Lorraine, lalo ka na. Alam mo, galit na galit ka sa mga Marcos. Halos isumpa mo na nga yung pamilyang yan. But you still supported him.
At saka hindi siya quarrelsome.
Hindi siya quarrelsome. Alam niya yan. Pero pinupush siya sa corner eh. And they found out, these people found out that the social media base of Bongbong Marcos are not that so bright, no? So, exactly.
Yes, yes,
But so he
yes,
has to
yes.
discipline them.
May pahabol pa na tanong, sorry.
Wait, let me
Yes.
contribute to the discussion.
Yes.
The president is the head of state of this country, okay? I don't have anything against the president, pero ang kanyang mga subordinates na kung saan inuunahan siya magsalita has to a little bit pay respect to the president. Kung hindi pa nagsasalita ang presidente mo, huwag ka munang maingay kasi inuunahan mo yung presidente mo. Ngayon, nagiging na-hijack ang presidente mo na-hostage na siya Kasi malay mo hindi gano'n ang kanyang gusto or malay mo hindi rin katulad ang statement niya sa statement ng PCG spokesperson na yan. Malay mo he wants to have middle ground. Malay mo he wants to communicate with President Xi Jinping and say, okay, President Xi Jinping, let's talk. Let's see how we can resolve this. Paano kung ganon? Pero hindi ka na makapagsalita kasi nauna na yung mga subordinate mo. Now, the president, I know that he is not a confrontational person. You can see it. Hindi naman siya yung palaaway. Pero ang ano lang natin is, he needs to be strong at this time. Because the country is already in a critical position. Kapag hindi siya naging strong at sabihin niya sa mga tao niya na, sandali lang, hintayin niyo ako before kayo bumuga at kumoda. Kasi may implication yan sa international relation ng bansa natin, not just with China, but with the rest of Asian countries. Hindi nyo ba naintindihan na even Malaysian Prime Minister, anong sabi? We have a very strong strategic relationship with China. And that Prime Minister, kailan niya sinabi yun? Lately lang. So anong ibig sabihin nun? In a matter of time, the Philippines will be isolated even its own sub-region, which is Southeast Asia and ASEAN. Ayaw naman natin sigurong ma-isolate ang Pilipinas. That is not to our advantage. So yun nga sinasabi ko, the President has to have the political will and to be strong enough to state the position really of the Philippines na hindi nauunahan ng kanyang subordinates tulad ni Babes at tulad nitong si Ewan.
Thank you. Thank
So
you. It's almost 1 o'clock.
I
So,
flashed it a
questions.
while ago, but I'll flash it again.
Question.
Nakikita po natin, Rappler, funded by the National Endowment for Democracy, pinapagalitan si Presidente. Matapos niya sabihin nga, gray area yan, meaning acknowledgement na pwedeng pag-usapan yan. Pero Rappler, pinapagalitan ang Presidente ng Republika ng Pilipinas, matapos ganyan din ang ginawa ni Justice Carpio. on the very same issue.
Thank you. Sorry, 1 o'clock already. There's a question here from Abante newspaper. Last, kasi, short answer lang, please. Ms. Cherk Balagtas Almadin of Abante newspaper. Please comment, short lang na comment, please, about Manila Bay reclamation controversy, all duly approved by the Duterte administration. Tapos, pinasuspend lahat. What are your comments? Just because, nag-complain lang ang US Embassy. What is your comment about it? It's already one.
Anong comment ko dyan? Welcome back, colonialism. Di ba? This is colonial era dynamics of the Philippines. Let's not kid ourselves. We are back in colonial times. We are just being given, the ability to live our lives according to how we want privately, but in terms of our external relations, wala na yan. Our external relations is guided by the United States na.
Thank you very much. It's already 1 o'clock. Kaya dapat short lang. Kasi gutom na daw. Media.
A lot has been said. I will not add on anything to it. But one person is not being mentioned here, and I will not give him he will not get scot-free. The spokesman of the National Security Advisor, Jonathan Malaya, said that the agreement about the BRP Sierra Madre is a fiction. Jonathan, you did not read the arbitral ruling. The arbitral ruling is not acceptable to me. But in the arbitration, this issue was discussed exhaustively and a lot of documents were submitted. Sa inyo mga nanonood na naghahanap ng dokumento, basahin nyo lang ang 2016 arbitral ruling. Whether you believe it or not is a separate issue. All I'm saying is all the documentation required about this agreement na pinalalabas nyo pa nagsisinungaling ang China is in the arbitration itself. Properly documented, registered in the Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague. At kayo ang gumagamit niyan, hindi kami. So gumagamit kayo ng dokumento, pero nag-cherry picking kayo. Kung ano yung pabor sa Amerikano, okay sa inyo. Pag sinabi na arbitral ruling, walang 9-dash line para magka 200 exclusive economic zone tayo, tanggap naman kayo. Pero in paragraph 574, sinasabi rin ng the same arbitral ruling that the Philippines could not claim the Kalayaan Island Group as an archipelago. Ano? Mawawalan tayo ng 230 square kilometers ng claim territory dahil lang sa matataba niyong mga bulsa, mga bayaran kayo. Tigilan nyo lang korupsyon! Ano na nangyari sa post-economic recovery agenda ni Bobo Marcos? Yan ang asikasuhin nyo. Do not divert our attention to a war that only the United States won. Period.
Thank you very much, Ado Paglinawan. There's another question here. Sorry, maraming questions. What is the possible solution or resolution to this dispute? 3 journalists asking. What is the possible solution or resolution to this dispute now?
Joint development. Joint development. My God,
The
Diyos por
smart way.
santo, this is not the only maritime problem in the world, in the history of the world. Diyos ko, nag-joint development because it doesn't make any sense to kill each other. My God! Salvo sa fisheries. Do you actually know that Filipino fishermen, I think in General Santos, actually fish in the EEZ of Papua New Guinea. Ano yung agreement? Capitalist, no? Okay, gusto naming mangisda dyan. Pero what did Papua New Guinea say? Pero sa amin ang processing. Kasi nasa processing ang more value, di ba? Sa amin ang packaging. So, ang ginawa ng Papua New Guinea, they would like to capture a lot of the steps in the value chain. Because when you do that, mas malaki yung kikitain mo. Kasi, yung isda, katulad yan ng palay. Ang kita dyan, hindi sa paghuhuli, hindi sa nasa processing, nasa end product and other produce. Diyos ko dahil, ang isda, ano ba to, nabibila sa to after 2 days, can you imagine? But no. But you can turn it into sardinas. The problem of our fisherman is not China. The problem of our fisherman is the lack of industrialization in our fishing industry. Punyeta, we are a very old fishing nation, no? Hanggang ngayon, Diyos ko dahil, yung mga mangingisda natin ang mahihirap. Tapos pinagmamalaki nila, the EEC will cost the fisherman, magkanong billion on fish daw? 200-something billion US dollars. Bakla, kung ganyan lang pala talaga kita dyan sa China Sea, di ang mga milyonaryo sa atin, yung mga mangingisda. Bilyonaryo. It doesn't make any sense. You would like to industrialize your fishing industry. Vietnam and China have a very industrialized fishing industries. You partner with them. Anong gagawin mo? We provide labor. We provide these steps in the value chain. Ngayon, kung yumaman ka na, think like a capitalist. Buy back the equity of these nations. Pero dahil utak, NPA ka. Hindi. Gusto namin lahat. Pag hindi namin nakuha ang lahat, mag-welga kami. Diba that's what a diplomatic protest is? That is just a social welga. No. And then what the NPI does na ultak pulbura is now what the AFP wants. Girahin. The same logic. Think like a capitalist.
Thank you. Brilliant. Actually,
Mamaya.
brilliant.
Ang reclamation project, may comment lang ako dyan.
Yes.
First and foremost, ang unang-una, just to clarify the facts, even Senator Gatchalian, I think, would be able to ascertain this. Lahat ata ng procedures dyan at mga permits na accomplish. Pero nagreklamo kasi ang US Embassy sa reclamation project at sinasite nila ang Chinese company, corporation na involved is nandun daw at blacklisted sa kanila. Ganito lang naman yun kasimple. Okay, fine. May problema kayo dun sa Chinese company. Problema nyo yun. That's United States. But this is not United States. This is Pilipinas. Hindi natin kailangan sundin kung anong ginagawa ng US. Kasi Pilipinas naman po tayo. Now, kung ang sinasabi, lahat naman na comply, good. Pero take note, ang reclamation project na yan, actually, ang plano dyan is magkakaroon yan ng pag natapos yan, supposedly, 100,000 jobs ang makikreate niyan. At saka, mayroon kang revenue, at saka may taxes ka na makukolect dyan. Kaso nga, sabi ng US Embassy, kasama kasi dyan ng Chinese corporation So hindi dapat matuloy. So out of the blue, hindi na siya natuloy at suspended na siya. Now, what is the lesson here? We should remember that the Philippines is not a colony anymore of the United States. We are an independent state. We can make our own decision and we can determine our future kasi hindi naman po tayo mga mangmang. Ang Pilipino po, karamihan ay matalino. Alam natin kung anong nakakabuti sa Pilipinas at anong hindi dapat at anong nakakasama. One thing that I can tell you, war is never and will never be good for the Philippines in every possible way. So sana po ay tumatak yan sa utak natin. Maraming salamat.
Thank you very much. With that, we would like to ask the three speakers to give us their closing statement para maka-launch naman ng mga media friends natin. May question pa? Ay, sorry. May last question si Miss Badoy.
So, ang America is expansionist, it has shameless war policies. I mean, we all know that, di ba?
Yes.
America is just being America with this reclamation project making all those demands, di ba? So, hindi talaga problema yung Amerika. Ang problema ay ang gobyernong pumapayag sa ganon.
Yes.
Right? Yun ang, because our government can say no to this, right? Am I correct, Sass,
Yes.
am I correct?
Why
So that's the
20+
problem in
projects?
essence, right? It's not America because America is just being America.
Very good
Shameless,
question and
di ba?
comment. Can anyone add a short comment onto that? Why isang US embassy complained 20+ projects all suspended all?
I would agree with
Tama.
Doc Lorraine, no? Tama. Kasi if you really look at America, sa history pa lang at sa lahat ng bansa na kung saan nagkaroon ng problema at until now is a mess. It's precisely because of them. You already know. Now ang tanong, bakit ang pumapayag ang gobyerno na diktahan ng Amerikano?
Yes.
At nagkandara pa pang isuspend, di ba? Ang tanong, what is it for them? Those people and those in government, what is it really for them? Why do they allow this to happen? Ayan ay hindi ko pwedeng sagutin kasi baka malibel ako.
Then they want to investigate pa. Then they have to have a round of investigation daw sa Senado.
Pero ang tanong kasi dyan,
Yes.
what is it for them, really?
Why?
Yun yung malaking tanong doon na
Why
kailangan
other than
sagutin.
any-
Pero
Yes.
mahirap kasing sumagot ako on these terms right now. Hantayin natin, wala namang hindi nabubulgar kapag ang
Yes.
totoo ay lalabas. The truth will always come out and the truth will set us free.
Yes. Thank you very much. Now, we will request the three very brilliant. Alam mo, hindi ako nag-agree kay Ambassador. You are actually intellectually brilliant, the three of you. So, let us start with Anna. Anna? Yes. Each one of you, please give a closing statement to summarize your ideas about this topic and your appeal to the public. Do we start with Ms. Sass, Rogando Sassot?
Okay.
Closing statement, yes.
Okay. Obviously, all our attempts to understand the situation in all its aspects is being taken as a sign of being a traitor by those who think that patriotism should be based on hate rather than on what makes us truly Filipino, which is our ability to see things from others' perspective, which the word kapwa, there's no culture in the world that has the word kapwa or its equivalent. Okay? Kapwa is the self in others. That is the highest supreme Filipino value. Kapwa. Ngayon, in which ethical system in the world is it an act of treason to pursue understanding rather than to be swallowed by the hatred of the masses? Have we forgotten what Martin Luther King Jr. once taught the world when he received his Nobel Peace Prize in 1964? He said, "We must win our opponent's understanding rather than continue to humiliate the opponent. Because seeking to humiliate is to annihilate rather than convert." Have we forgotten what the Holy Bible said? Diba, we are a Christian nation. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons of God. Have we forgotten how the Prophet Muhammad and his followers made peace with the pagans of Mecca through negotiations and a treaty? To our Asian brothers and sisters, from the great old civilization China, let me tell you something about the national psyche of our very young country. Your people have a national identity that can be traced back thousands of years. Our identity is a product of Western colonization. We might be the only one in Asia who didn't defeat our colonizer. We did once, but the Declaration of Independence of 1898 was quickly stolen by the United States. So we are a deeply subjugated people. However, just like you, our Chinese brothers and sisters, we still have unhealed trauma from the past. We cope with this trauma. And I'm just gonna say this, we cope with this trauma by embracing the colonial masters who abused us for centuries because, unlike other Asians, we never went back to our roots but continued to live according to how we were colonized. Now, China, like your near sea, our seas, the sea surrounding the Philippines, had been a source of our vulnerability. With their warships, the West used the sea as the launchpad of their barbarism. We may have forgiven our colonizers, but we have never forgotten what it felt to be humiliated in our land through our seas. The sea, we call the West Philippine Sea, is the space where we seek the independence we never truly won in our history. The space where we could finally enjoy the euphoria of winning after struggling with a great power. Now, to Filipinos, what we feel about our sea is the same feeling China has over its near sea. It's a source of their vulnerability. It is through the weakness of their sea defenses that China experienced the same kind of humiliation we experience. But they experience worse than us, to be honest. Have we forgotten what our national hero Jose Rizal once said about China? Okay, this is what he said. China will consider herself fortunate if she succeeds in keeping herself intact and is not dismembered or partitioned among the European powers that are colonizing the continent of Asia. But China wasn't so fortunate. China was partitioned by the West among themselves. Then Japan, later on, copied the Western powers. So, unlike us, China was simultaneously occupied by different Western powers. That's the truth of it, no? So while we got passed from one colonial master to another, China served several colonial masters at the same time. So kumbaga sa rape, na-rape lang tayo after ng isa, meron namang isa. Sila, they were gang rape. China was gang rape. So for China, it's South Sea. That's what they call the South China Sea. The South Sea is a sea where it wants to be strong, just like us. So it could never be subjected to the same kind of humiliation. They want to be strong in the same way we want to be strong in the face of the treacherous waters of the sea of our vulnerability. But let us remember this. Our common sea isn't only waves of pain. Through its waters flow the long peace our peoples had with each other. China is not just another country to us. China is family. Our great hero Jose Rizal has Chinese ancestry. We share the same blood. Why should we throw away a millennia of peace in order to pursue goals that can be reconciled if you will just be patient enough? During the Spanish colonization, we were fooled by the Spaniards to kill the Chinese. So should we fall again to the spell of Americas, it's either you're with them or against us. So to conclude, let me use what President Ramon Magsaysay once said. The Philippines, hindi niya so sinabi, I'm just reworking what he said. The Philippines, China, and the rest of our fellow Asians have a glorious pre-colonial past. Now, together, we must build a future worthy of that past. We Asians should never, ever forget that the West came to our region not to bring peace, not to develop it, but to divide our lands and seas among themselves, to subjugate our ancestors, and to shamelessly plunder our continents of its riches, to bring material progress to Europe, while our people were maldeveloping and entrenched in deep poverty. We must not let them do this again. We know what they want from our region. They want the same things they wanted when they colonized every Asian country. And that is Asian resources. The civilization of the Philippines and China have a long history of peaceful relations. We share the same pain of being humiliated by the Western powers. We both belong to Asia, and the South China Sea is our common heritage. Asian resources belong to Asians. No more dead Asians sacrificed at the altar of Western civilization. Asian peace is peace inspired by the wisdom of our ancestors and the fulfillment of our duty to the future generations of Asians. Asian peace can no longer be the peace of American guns and bombs and arrogance. Asian peace can no longer be the white man's burden. Asian peace shouldn't be the fallout of another mushroom cloud over Asian cities. It is only Asians that were victims to nuclear bombs, not white people, only Asians. Always remember that. They never dropped this to Nazi Germany. They dropped this to Asian cities. Asian peace is the civilization we lost, which we must reclaim together, patiently together, all under heaven, like the Chinese would say it, with the dignity of seeing each other as kapwa, like how we Filipinos see it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much to the intellectually brilliant and very eloquent Sass Rogando Sasso. Thank you very much. Next, si Professor Ana Malindogoy for her closing statement.
Okay, let me read one part of the article that I wrote, no? The cause of the problem with our country is that we have unrealistic expectations from the United States and a colonial mind. We do have a colonial mind. That's something that we have to at least undo. As sabi nga ni Renato Constantino, Sass, a true Filipino is a decolonized Filipino. It talks about the mind, you know. And likewise, this current administration, I'm sorry to say this, no, but this is my analysis, no. Likewise, this current administration is trying to take advantage of the rivalry between China and the United States to assert our maritime claims in the South China Sea. Unrealistically and unpragmatically. This is unrealistic and unpragmatic. Why? Because this strategy is bound to, is doomed and is bound to fail, misjudging the likely of an all-out military support from the United States. I don't think so. They will use us as a pawn and a proxy. And misjudging as well the strong and firm resolve of the Chinese people and its government to protect also what it claims and what it claims to be its territory. So may misjudgment doon. So wag padalos-dalos kasi baka magka-litsihan kawawa ang Pinoy dito. This is, I guess, something that our government officials in this current administration and President Marcos need to think through and probably ponder on before it's too late. But one thing is certain, all regional countries, including the Philippines, must safeguard peace and stability in the South China Sea. The world cannot afford another military crisis tantamount to a war on our side of the world. If peace and stability and security are to be sustained in the ASEAN and the wider Asia-Pacific region, Filipinos and Asians must take center stage in resisting the costly consequences of geopolitics, and that's war and conflict. In a war, there are no winners, only losers. In retrospect, the complication of the geopolitics are indeed costly for the Philippines. The Philippines cannot afford it. But the path toward economic development will benefit the Philippines and the Filipinos. The path to peace creates security and stability, and we achieve economic prosperity through peace and stability. That is a fact. Kahit saang mundo ka pumunta at kahit i-trace mo yung history ng buong mundo, peace is always a requirement. Stability is always a requirement when you want to have economic progress and, development. Hence, a peaceful, pragmatic, and diplomatic resolution to the South China Sea dispute through open-minded, respectful, and sincere dialogue and negotiation between the Philippines and China and other claimant states, no matter how difficult, is a must. and the optimal solution to the South China Sea dispute. Trying to rely on the unreliable U.S. promises to resist or fight China over the disputed waters of the South China Sea will only backfire. Is also counterproductive, dangerous for Philippines, and will aggravate the complexity and tension in the contested waters of the South China Sea. Mga kababayan, ano ba talaga ang gusto natin? Gusto ba natin ng economic development or gera? Kasi po, sa gulo at kahit political instability lang ng bansa, kawawa po ang ekonomiya natin. At sino po ba ang magugutom? Tayo-tayo lang din. Hindi po ako mayaman. Yung mayayaman po, baka umalis lang ng bansa kapag nagkakagulo dito. Pero yung mga tulad sa atin na ordinaryong tao, we need a very stable economy and we need a very stable politics. Kung hindi po, kawawa ho tayo. So, isipin po nating mabuti ang mga sitwasyon at wag lang yung emosyon ang gamitin. Mag-isip po tayo at maging rational actors po tayo. Maraming salamat po lalo na sa ating mga kaibigang media. Maraming salamat.
Thank you very much, Professor Ana Malindog Uy.
Not more than
Next,
30
Mr. Herman Laurel.
seconds. Speaking of mayaman, I'll show you the photo of a very, very rich Filipino. Josh, can we flash it now? Ayan po, si Ginoong Manuel Pangilinan, inalok noong 2014 sa China ang Sprat lease. How many of you know that? That he believes he has the power to be the one to offer the Sprat lease to China. This is one of the complications that we have not discussed, but it is really at the heart of the matter. And to a great degree, the control of media is in his hands, among other oligarchs. So I leave that as a thought for you to ponder.
Thank you once again to all our speakers. Hindi kayo intellectually deficient. You are all intellectually brilliant and honest. Thank you very much to all our speakers. Once again, Ms. Sass, Rogando, Sassot. Thank you for the crash course on history and diplomacy. Very, very practical. Let us please share the thoughts niya. We have recording that we will share to everyone. Of course, to the nationalists, activists, and idealists, Mr. Herman Laurel. Thank you for your courage and your consistent principled stand on many issues. Last but not least, si Professor Ana Malindog Uy. Passionate and also very enlightening. Thank you very much. By the way, ang ganda ng sinabi ninyo. Alam mo, there was a professor that came here a few months ago. He was the one who coined the phrase West Philippine Sea, si Walden Bello. Pero hindi ko makalimutan, ang sabi niya dito, actually South China Sea daw is actually an American lake. Sabi niya, kasi daw puno-puno ng American bases daw targeting our neighbor China. Kaya maganda sinabi ninyo, we should resolve this issue among ourselves, Philippines and China as neighbors and friends, not have a third-party country encourage any disagreement and problems. And kanina, si Sass, Rogando Sassot, kinot niya ang Bible. Let us remember, sabi niya, blessed are the peacemakers, for we shall inherit the earth. Yata. May sinabi pang Bible, I want to quote, pag may taong gustong may gera o away-away o magtapon ng mga bato, itapon na lang natin pandesal. Symbol of peace. Once again, thank you to everyone. At saka may sinabi si Sass sa Facebook niya na hindi niya nasabi today. Nabasa ko, I learned a lot from reading Sass and Miss Padoy and Mr. Laurel. Sabi mo, Sass, di ba na Japan and Taiwan in their territorial dispute over Jiaoyu Islands, they've been hosting each other water noon pa. Kasi friends sila eh. Ayaw nila na banggaan sa kagera. Kaya actually the use of water cannons, based sa sinabi ni Sass, tama ba yun? Sass, hindi siya nothing new. Hindi siya actually enemy action. It's actually trying to kaya thank you very much to our media friends We have lunch to be served to everyone. And thank you to our brilliant speakers. And kanina to the Miss Dr. Henry Chan, all the way from Singapore. Thank you for all your ideas. And to the diplomat, Mr. Zhao. Mr. Zhao, yes, thank you very much to everyone. Let us continue this non-stop education and dialogue. Thank you very much.
May lunch.
May lunch tayo ha. Tapos don't forget sinabi ni Professor Ana Malindog, ang choice natin dapat economic development, not war. Thank you.